And welcome to the Township Whitewater Region's regular council meeting for Wednesday, November 20th, and we'll call ourselves to order here at 4:47 p.m. And first on our agenda is the national anthem, so if I get you to stand and face the flag, please. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, to patriot love in all of us command, with glowing hearts we sing, God through your strong and free, from far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Perfect. Thank you. And next we're going to do our land acknowledgement, and I ask Councillor Olmsted if he would do it today, please.
Great, thank you, Mayor. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of the Township Whitewater Region and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Omami Winini Algonquin people. We thank the Omami Winini people and express our respect and support for the rich history, and we are extremely grateful for the many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township Whitewater Region approve the November 20th, 2024 agenda. A mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Tabbert. Any proposed changes or amendments to the agenda as presented? Good. Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Next is adoption of minutes. We have some regular council meeting minutes from November 6th. The recommendation is the Council of Township Whitewater Region approve the regular minutes of November 6, 2024. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Tripp, Deputy Mayor. Any errors or omissions noted in the minutes that were provided? I see none, so we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Included in this section of the agenda are a number of committee or Renfrew and Area OPP Detachment Board minutes from May, June, August, and September. And our council lead for this OPP Detachment Board is Councillor Tabbert. Is there any comments you want to make with respect to the enclosed minutes?
Thank you. There are nothing specific I want to mention. There are too many of them to talk about, but I was negligent in asking them to send us the minutes after each meeting. So I did go back and ask Carolyn if she would do that for us, because I know there were some concerns about this board. So yeah, you can read the minutes, and any questions, we can answer them for you. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is disclosures of interest. Is there any disclosures for any of the items on the agenda tonight? And I see none. Excellent. So we'll move on into our presentations. The first presentation we have, I believe, is a virtual presentation from our Renfrew and Area OPP Detachment Board. And I've asked Councillor Tabbert as our lead just to do a quick introduction on the speakers.
Good evening. I am pleased to introduce Jason Legree. He's a municipal representative for the Renfrew and Area OPP Detachment. Mr. Legree and the 8 other municipal representatives play a pivotal role in fostering collaboration between the OPP and our community, ensuring safety, transparency, and effective communication. Thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Legree.
Thank you. And welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay, Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. I'm not sure how do you want to do this. I'm kind of filling in for the chair that couldn't be here this evening, but if you want me to kind of go over a high level of line by line of the budget, or I don't know if you have the budget, if there's any questions, or how you want me to proceed.
Just 1 second, Councillor Green. Just be a second. We've got it in front of us?
Yes.
Excellent. So just to make sure that we all had it here, when we do, if you could just give us a quick overview of what it is, and I noticed the attached letter that you had has some details in it, but if you can just give an overview not only for us but the public as well, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as of April 1st, 2024, the Ontario government has changed the way the police services boards are formed. So the new formation of the Renfrew and Area OPP Detachment Board consists of 7 municipalities now. And then, so basically we had to, there's an elected official from each of the municipalities, and then 2 provincial appointees that have not been appointed yet, and then 2 residential appointees. So there's 11 on the board altogether. And then what we're doing now is we put together a budget on, and again, this has not, there's a lot of unknowns in this budget because we're not sure what we don't know yet. So it's a bit of a guess for 2025, I guess. And then coming back with the 2026 budget for the Police Services Board, we're hoping to have a better understanding of, of what we need. And there's a little bit more of a cost, and I can go through this here in a few minutes, but there's a bit more of a cost because there's a setup like with websites and stuff like that. So basically, the 7 municipalities have to agree on a budget, basically. Like we made a draft of it, approved it through the board, the Police Services Board. Now it's gone to each of the 7 municipalities for review and discussion with each of the councils. And then they can come back with feedback to the Police Services Board with any recommendations or changes you'd like to see. I guess the big things I'll point out is what we're seeing across Ontario is how the billing will be split up. So, for example, if the 7 municipalities can't come up to how it's going to be split, like the cost of it, then it reverts back to equal billing. So whatever the cost, if it's, say it's $70,000 and there's 7 municipalities, and $10,000 goes to each municipality. If there's some boards are doing it by proportional billing, so it's per household. So it depends on, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but depends on, the municipality. Some it's cheaper to do it that way, some it's more, depending on, I think, the size. But that would have to be, all 7 would have to agree on a clear path if they didn't want to go with equal billing. So if 6 say yes and 1 says no, then automatically reverts back to equal billing as per the province. So in front of you, you have the budgets that the board has put together for 2025, and I can kind of, if you're okay with that, Mayor, I can kind of go through it just line by line quickly.
If you could.
Yeah. So we'll start at the top. So board member cost. So there is a mistake here. You'll probably figure out with the math we just noticed a few minutes ago. So we have a board meeting tomorrow. I'm going to take it back and get it corrected. But basically, we're looking at roughly 8 meetings a year. Each board member, excluding the chair, will get $150 per meeting. So that's where the math is wrong. I think it should be $1,200 instead of the $1,050. The chair, because there's more work and he's in and out of the office signing and stuff like that, if he would get $400 per month for the 12 months. So that comes to $4,800. And then there's employer costs that we've added on of 14%. So basically that would equal up to $17,442 once we have to make the adjustment there. And then moving down to travel, so the mileage estimated would be $40 per meeting, 8 meetings at 11 members, comes to $3,520. And then the chair would get, he goes weekly into Renfrew into the town office for now to sign off on checks and stuff like that, so he'd get $40 a trip. So that comes to $1,920. There is Zone 2 meetings. So if 3 members attend, and that's 3 of them meetings a year, sorry. So 3 members attending 3 meetings a year would be $3,600. And then we have the AGM, the OAPSB AGM meeting, which is once a year. And then there would be 4 people attending because the zone meetings are close, so there would be no rooms or anything like that. But the AGM is usually out of town, so there would be more of a cost to it. So it's about $2,500 per person, per board member, sorry. So that would be $10,000, which brings that line item to $19,040. Under government and operational, so there's insurance, which is $5,000. Reporting, $2,500. The strap plan and web design, so that would be having somebody come in and we'd have to set up a website and then help us with our strap plan. So strap plan $3,500 and the website is $2,000. Then the website hosting per year would be $1,500. Professional services we have at $5,000. And then our OASP membership is $3,000 a year. So under governance and operational, it's about $22,500. Then moving down under program, we have IT and phone at $3,000. Office supplies, paper, pens, stuff like that at $2,000. And then there's a administrator. So this is the big thing right here, because we're not really sure what hours we need. So up until now, until the end of the year, we have the clerk in Renfrew that's been kind of doing our admin side of it. But starting in the new year, we're going to have to hire like an admin secretary, look after emails, setting up the meetings. And there's quite a bit of work now because everything is kind of changing with the government a bit, because this is all new and was implemented fairly quickly. So we're not sure, like 20 hours might be too much, but I think as a board, we think the start of it, we'll need them 20 hours, but once we get all the policies and procedures and everything in place, that could be cut down. So that's $31,200. And then the mandatory employment related costs, the TPP, EI, the tax is another $93,660. So that brings that to $45,560. So then we have a budget of $114,994 for the 12 months of 2025. So I don't know if there's any questions there, Nick.
Yeah, that's perfect. What I'll do is because Councillor Talbert's lead for this, is there anything you want to add before we open up for questions?
No, I don't.
You're good. Excellent. Thank you. We really appreciate you going through the detail, because it's not something that we always take time to make sure that we can share with the public. So I appreciate you taking the time. And I just want to note from a council perspective is we've actually passed a resolution already in support of the budget. So you've already got your green light, but we really appreciate, again, to make sure that we can highlight this information to the public. I think it was, I don't know which council meeting, but we've already got that resolution, so it'll be flowing through, probably through your administrator from our clerk. But with that, I'll open it up to questions. Is there any member of council that has any questions? Councillor Tripp.
Yes, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, we did approve the budget for this, and we've estimated in our budget that we will be looking at later this afternoon for $20,000. That $20,000 may be a little high, or it may be not enough, and we don't know what it is going forward. During the discussion at council, I expressed my frustration because this extra money is coming at a time when we need to take care of unanticipated OPP costs as it is. And I'm going to be very anxious to see how our community has benefited from this $20,000 expenditure over the next year. I'm not clear yet. Maybe I'll take some time with Councillor Tabbert, have her sit down with me to tell me how our community is going to benefit from this. I don't understand that yet. And I know we have no choice. That isn't up to us. We're the subdivision of the province and we have to do what we're told. But doesn't mean I'm happy about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, point taken. And I think that also goes to Councillor Tabbert to take back, is we owe back communication to the public as to what is being achieved by the board. So attaching the minutes is one example of making sure that the communication comes back, but providing updates and that kind of thing. Anything from your perspective, Councillor Legree?
Through you, Mayor, I just want to note that we are going to take a look at the budget in like 6 months in, like around June, just to kind of see where we're sitting, you know, to see if we've over budgeted anywhere. And then we'll talk to give each council every quarter an update on where we are and what's going on. So that can come through Councillor Tabbert, but we are going to keep an eye on it and keep all the councils, all 7, very informed of where we are with it and stuff like that. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Moore.
I'm just wondering, through you, Mr. Mayor, what will happen if there is a closed session? Will we be receiving them minutes, or what will happen with the closed session? If, in fact, they will have one.
I think that they do mention closed sessions in the minutes already. So, Councillor Legree, how does that work? How does your confidentiality work with your board? I know it's a separate board, but how does it work in terms of what can be shared back with the municipalities?
So, yes, through you, Mayor. So we will be having some closed sessions down the road. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how that works. I can find out and I can give your clerk an update on that. So let me take that back tomorrow. I apologize. I don't have an answer to you for that tonight. So.
No, that's perfect. That's good. And we understand there may not be stuff you can share, but we just want to make sure if you do share it with us, we know how to treat that information.
And then once we get our website up and going, there will be, we're hoping that each municipality will have a link to it. So the minutes and everything will also be posted on the Police Services Board website and stuff where people, and I get closed minutes are different, but where the public can technically, they can go into like Whitewater Region's website and click and go right into the Police Services Board and get the minutes and all that. So as much as we can keep transparent, we will be. So,
yeah, that's perfect. Any other questions? No, I will just, I know that you're going to be getting some resistance back in these briefings to the different municipalities. When we looked at our proportionate cost, it's pretty much already right in the middle. We're the average size amongst the 7 municipalities, so our portion doesn't change regardless of how you might just proportion out the expenses. So the impact on Whitewater doesn't really, it's not significant enough depending on which option you choose. But I do know in talking to some of the smaller municipalities, they're quite upset about their costs being significantly higher on a equal billing basis. So I would just recognize that, and I know you're going to receive that feedback from other municipalities. Good. If there was one other question I could offer, and it isn't related to the finance, and I understand that it may not be in your committee or your function, but if you could take it back, it's just, can you offer us some insight? Whitewater Region is policed by 2 different detachments. We've opted to belong to one of the 2 detachment boards. Can you offer any insight of how that information is exchanged between the detachments? If it's decided something at the board, how does it work for the other part of Whitewater Region that may be policed by a different detachment?
Yeah, I can take that back. We have a meeting tomorrow, so I can get you that information, and I'll get back to you on that for sure.
That's perfect. Good. Any other questions, members of council? No, perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us tonight. We really appreciate you sharing this information and look forward to seeing how the board can progress OPP and all matters OPP in our area.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, and have a good meeting.
Yes, thank you. Bye. Excellent. Okay, next item on the agenda, 6.2, is the third quarter administration report. And the recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township Whitewater Region approve the third quarter administration report for information purposes. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Bell. And over to the CAO.
Yes, thanks so much. So I'm pleased to present Council with the third quarter 2024 quarterly report. Just highlighting from the message of the CAO, just indicating that during this period we prepared for and submitted delegation requests for the AMO conference. So we did have numerous submissions being made then and prepared some submission packages for the different ministries. So successful in highlighting our needs to the province of Ontario and building relationships with the provincial government. I did not attend the conference. However, we did have staff, our clerk Miller and our manager of public works attend in my place. So I gave them also the experience to better familiarize themselves with that process. So thanks for attending in my place. Also, through the third quarter, I did attend several important meetings, and these events provided me both valuable successes and learning opportunities. So just to highlight a couple, I attended the Seniors Active Living Center opening for the new Active Living Center. So just a success with respect to the opening of the new center. And also we held our Tourist Booth Volunteers Lunch-On, so thanking our Tourist Booth volunteers for their contribution through the summer. I attended several other sessions, learning opportunities with the representative from the Community Resource Center in Killaloe. The Pikwakanagan Connecting Workshop, which is very revealing. It certainly opened some eyes for myself to see the similarities with local governments. And then also the individual councillor mid-year reviews with the mayor. So certainly nice to reflect on our progress and to see how we could align our future contributions moving forward. And lastly, just acknowledging the ongoing commitment of our employees and my continued focus on remaining aligned with council's strategic direction to fostering a culture of professionalism and teamwork, which all contributes to making our community a great place to live. So a few messages from myself. I'll move into the community development summary. So for the third quarter, we issued 49 building permits for a total value of just over $7 million. In comparison to 2023, January to end of September, there was 147 permits issued, valued at just shy of $19 million. And for 2024, just one additional permit, 148 permits in the same period, at a value of just over $20 million. So permit numbers are trending quite similarly to the previous year, and through our budget variance that the Treasurer pulled together in the last week, we're seeing revenues increasing closer to what our budgeted revenues were supposed to be. So that's very positive. Quickly over communication. So in discussing with our community development coordinator, Rebecca Gill, moving into next year, she's going to provide some comparables year over year. So it's hard to understand what all of this means, but moving into to next year, we're going to be able to have some comparators from 2024. Noting that at the end of Q3 2024 on Instagram, we had 1,000 followers. In Instagram, we have just about 4,500 followers on Facebook. So we do have a reach in those two streams of social media. Moving over to the work plan and strategic process. So we did close the tourist booth, highlighting again the successes of the season, and we did advance the phase 2 of our marketing project. So council did receive the activity guide at the last meeting, so some progress there. Key activities, we were able to recruit on a contract a new planner to replace Alex Benzie. So Alex P. has commenced with us in late August and has proven a good fit for the team. And further to that, we've reinitiated the township's welcome packages. So as part of some transition with team members, we stopped the welcome packages, but we've reinitialized that on our website, and we've been receiving some new applications and delivering the welcome packages. So looking ahead, the 2 items listed here have already occurred, but we continue to focus on our departmental work plan to achieve the different actions that we were looking to achieve this year. So I'd welcome questions. Maybe what we'll do, if at your discretion, Mayor, questions on community development, and then we can move over to community services.
Thank you, CAO. Great to see all that progress. And I appreciate the comparison of 2023 and 2022, especially with the building permits and values. Any questions from members of council on community development? Good. Seeing none, we'll progress.
Yeah, so we'll just pass it over to our Manager of Community Services, Stephanie Clubin.
Thank you, everybody. I apologize for the length of my report, and I'll keep it short. So our numbers, and I will say that the last quarterly report, there was a request to see how much grass we cut. So that's taking up a big chunk of my space. I'll go with that. So rental space, slab, ice, arena hall, you can see the grass cutting numbers as well. So that's a square footage estimation. I will lean heavy on the estimation to say that that's what we cut in Whitewater region on a weekly/bi-weekly basis, depending on the usage. I wanted to include a section in this quarterly report relating to the Whitewater seniors. So you'll notice that at the end of each of my, by the numbers in each section, there's a seniors section as well. So those numbers are beginning from February, but also we're specific in detail for Meals on Wheels versus frozen meals versus curbside meals. So you'll see those laid out there. The capital works projects that were completed and the review of user fees and agreements, completing the ICE schedule was all done at this time of the year. Staff wanted to mention the rentals and the use of the facilities and community services, so the ball field, the park, the beach, the visitor center. We've replaced some of the deck at the beach house in Cobden. It was a safety hazard, as well as the steps out the back of the visitor center. That's all been repaired. And there's some further work to be done there, but we're working with the contractor to get more work completed. The septic tanks were all serviced at the arenas. The facilities themselves had some individual work done. The Cobden Arena had some repairs to the air conditioner. In addition to that, we started with the ICE schedule and adopting the new insurance requirements, sending out email information to all of our renters, and then preparing the arena for the fair, followed by the ICE, and hiring the required staff to do so. The lending hub, just as a note, was well received by our users, and I did include some of the comments that were made, making it more accessible, and accessible meaning able to get to it, as opposed to having to find a way to it. So what we're going to look at to next year is maybe a location that might be better. And including in that the Whitewater Seniors Lending Hub, which they were accessible to their I would say toys and or other activities that were available and are still being used throughout the lending hub at the seniors. Funding applications, we did the Seniors Active Living Fair, and as well as the New Horizons for Seniors program was applied for this. In addition to that, I highlighted a couple of the services that are now being offered through our seniors program in partnership with our with the Eganville seniors, as well as other partners. So you can see what some of the effects we've had on the local community. Links to well-being, the bus trips, the transportation collaboration, all of those things are new programs that we're working through. And if anybody has referrals to any of those programs, Julie would absolutely welcome the communication for that. I will try to keep up to date with some of these numbers and create a bit of a table going forward, but I wanted to just initiate these numbers in your quarterly report so you had the background. Looking ahead, we're working with staff to have the asset management updates and life cycle life cycle next steps taking forward. And then the fall intake of the recreation grant was just awarded to those groups, so they've received notification of that. And then the Whitewater seniors update, they have plans for a Christmas lunch. We were successful in the health fair application through OACAO, so we're getting funding to run a seniors health fair in March. And then a Trillium Foundation application was put forward in partnership with Eganville District Seniors, Barry's Bay Home Support, and Pikwakanagan to further our use with the Aging Well at Home funding going forward. If you have any questions.
Excellent, thank you. And I just before I open it to questions, I'll just say it's amazing when you see the breadth of things that the community services manager is responsible for. Who did this stuff before we hired you? Just checking. Just goes to show. And just, for the, to recognize, you also are responsible to coordinate with the library and the Historical Society and the 4 recreation associations and the snow goers and the ATV. So yes, this gives us a great appreciation for all the different balls you have in the air, and it's great to see this kind of progress. And the public comments that are coming back that are obviously able to guide us. So with that, I'll open it to questions or comments from other members of council. Councillor Tripp.
Yes, following that, to give credit where it is due, I do know that staff were working at the Westmeath boat launch doing grass trimming, weed trimming, and it isn't included here, but it was done, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Anything else, members of council? Excellent. Thank you so much. CEO?
Yeah, sure. We'll move over to Treasurer Curtis McGonigal with Corporate Services. Thanks.
Thank you, CEO. So I just wanted to illustrate to council the corporate services side. Property taxes outstanding at the end of September was $1.6 million. In this report this time around, I have shown in the makeup of that outstanding. How much of it is the 2024 billing and penalty, $873,000. How much is from 2023's billing, which is $464,000. 2022 accounts for $194,000, and $142,000 is the remainder from 2021 and prior. So these amounts, whenever we look at the 2021 prior, that is our 3-year and back amount, and that is the amount that we then issue our notices out to properties our personalized notices to try and get them to make their payment portion. And if they don't, those are the properties that we proceed to tax sell at some point going through the process. So in this quarter, the 3rd and final notice was sent out to these property owners. At that point in time when we were done, up to when this was drafted last week, we had 13 properties, 6 less properties than notice 2 sent out. And that resulted in $30,650 received dollars. And then of those 13 notices, if nobody comes and pays for that point, they will then be registered and start the tax sale process where they'll have a farm debt notice issued, and we'll go with our contractor for that. Utility billing sits at $227,170. It's my hope in the next quarterly report to actually present a graph on how that looks as well, but it is comparable to prior years. Development charges, so with all the building permits and stuff going on recently, and then some more increase of permits going out, there's $53,685 received for the township-wide development charges. Quarter Q3 had $18,435 of that. $1,500 for wastewater. There's no increase in Q3, and then $5,000 for water service. So that's any new properties built in Haley's, Beachburg, or Cobden that are attached to our water service, and that's in $1,000 increase in Q3. So just as a note to council, development charges, the total in reserve right now for the township wide is just a little over $305,000. For wastewater, it's sitting just a little over $13,500, and for water, $30,000. These are all monies that can be used in future budgets for any growth-related items. That's what the piece is tied to. That's tied to our development charges study. So just a note for council. General fund overall shows a $1.9 million surplus. However, no transfers to reserve have happened yet. 66% of wastewater has been received, as 4 of the 6 notices as of September 30th were issued, similar with our water budget. Key activities, as you all know, the 2025 budget process began with staff receiving budget direction from council, and our 2024 final bills were sent out. And then we're working with departments to update the township asset management plan and to prepare for the 2025 legislative deadline. So looking ahead, I'll be bringing a report to council showing the reserve and reserve funds and a review of the actual policy to illustrate those balances, the development charges and others of where those sit. And then we'll be continuing with the asset management plan to meet the legislative deadline and the finalization of the budget by December 4th. Is there any questions?
Take a deep breath. Any questions on Treasurer's presentation? Councillor Moore, then Councillor Tripp.
I don't know if you can answer this or not, but in regards to arrears and collection, are we about normal for this time of year for that? Any idea? Are we higher this year, lower this year? Just curious.
So if you refer to the actual graph, it does show higher. But part of that is because in September of that year, we have not a large portion, but we do have a portion of properties that are considered PIL. So it's payments in lieu. So these are properties owned by the Crown or owned by the Government of Ontario. Those properties pay us property taxes in lieu of actually us billing them property taxes. So they do a billing based on that, but they don't look at our actual calculations. They just calculate it based on the assessment and their own rates calculated in. It still matches our system, but we cannot charge them penalty and interest, nor can we really tell them when to pay us. So normally what happens is it's received late November. It hasn't been received yet, but it's normally received late November, early December. So whenever I started here at the township, I actually implemented them into our actual taxation system. That's why in August in 2023, you see this large jump in the actual taxes outstanding. And then that similar flow in for this year because of the increases of properties and things like that on those PIL sides. It accounts for a large portion of it. Taxes outstanding this year only have very minor compared if you remove the PIL portion.
Thank you.
Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Treasurer, I'm looking at key activities bullet 4, and it's good news, I think. It's going to allow your plan is to make it easier for our constituents to pay their taxes. And I know I talked to you before about e-transfers, and you explained to me, no, that wasn't. That was an administrative nightmare and not really secure, and no municipalities were doing it. So could you explain to me what this will be, please? Thank you.
Sure. So it's not that no municipalities are doing e-transfers. There is a few municipalities that do it, but it is administratively burdensome for the way it's done. The payment method is more or less going to be a extension of our Paymentus software that we already have on our website. It will just be that you would actually be able to pull up your bill. Say we'll use property tax, for example. You pull up your property tax bill, which is emailed to you directly, so we no longer have to print you a bill. It is emailed to you, you get a notification saying it's there, you pull up your account, there's your bill, you say, oh, I want to pay this bill. You click on that, it autofills the amount that you're paying, or you can change it depending on which way you want to go, like which picking your installment. You click next, carry on through, make the payment. It would still, however, fall under the same fees as the other schedule would. The upside to having your account is we're hoping to have it fully live so that if you made your payment that way, the system would actually automatically update, so you'd be able to generate your own receipt from us electronically, and you can see that your account is automatically up to date. The other side is if you see your amount like that with the up to date, so say you're making your own smaller payments or anything like that, and you want to just check on your account, you can still go through and do the online banking payments, or you can still drop off a payment at the office, but you already know what the amount is without actually having to contact the township. So if you're busy from the 8:30 to 4 on most days that cannot contact the township, you're able to see that amount on your own on a weekend and still be able to, so it's a betterment of service to the public to be able to actually see their account and see the actual going-ons that are going on.
If I may further, Mr. Mayor, then Treasurer, will there be kind of instructions there somehow so that if people want to do sign the township as a payee, sign up so that they'll know how to do it? Is that those instructions going to be there, or how would that work?
So right now we're in very early development stages because of the contractor, unfortunately, not for our own wanting to have it up and running. But I do know on our website right now, those instructions already exist. So it would just be a piece of attaching them into the actual software of make a payment, where it would say either connect to our Paymentus portal, or here's your other options. And we would just kind of hopefully list it out that way. It would be my hope to get it as expanded as possible, because we don't want to have anybody incur any other fees. But if they want to use a credit card, that's where the Paymentus side comes in, because we as a township don't accept credit card. Other methods, the online banking, the direct transfer, those things, those are the ones that are the other options.
Thank you.
Good. Councillor Bell.
Sorry, just a quick question, follow-up to that. Is that going to be an option that you can opt in and opt out of, so you can still receive a paper bill for those who don't function online? You can opt into having paper billing continue?
Yeah, so we as the township won't remove the paper billing side, but what we'll do is we're going to launch it as if you would like to receive electronic billing, then you can enter into that piece, and then whenever property changes, like sales and those types of things happen, they would automatically be switched back to the paper side unless they contact the township and then ask for the electronic again. The township is mandated through the Municipal Act that we have to provide a property tax bill at minimum as our final billing. We provide the interim billing as well because it's the most practical and best practice. So what would happen is by sending an electronic version, there would actually be an electronic trail, because I as the treasurer have to actually have a record of when the bills were sent out to prove that they've gone out. I don't need to ensure that they were received by the specific person, but I need to make sure they were sent out at the minimum about 21 days ahead of the due date. The electronic trail that this email would create would be the trail that follows that through.
Any other questions? Councillor Olmsted.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we track how people are paying, whether it's by check, so we don't receive credit cards, but do we receive debit cards?
We do, yeah.
Or I know some people probably come in and put cash down on it. So is there a mechanism to track how people are paying?
Yes, a little labor intensive, but yeah, our system, whenever we come in, whenever anybody attends the office, the method of payment is automatically chosen whenever we process a payment. So if they're electronically through the bank, there's a telebanking section that we know exactly how it was paid. Or if it's cash, it's selected as a tender option. Same thing with cash or a check, and then same thing with debit card. So we already automatically know what each of them are. The only thing would be just a compilation of information as to know what percentage is which. And how I show that information as to whether it's total dollar value or whether it's number of people. There is a very big different skew in that, because sometimes the checks are much larger, so it would more be advantageous to the number of people. But
Right, and there's a mechanism to pay monthly as well online, right?
there is. And we would hopefully be able to tie this into that software that you'd be able to automatically apply for the pre-authorized payment plan,
Right.
which is where the township actually withdraws from your account, either monthly or installment date. The upsides to those plans is that there is no penalty, and we don't charge a service fee for doing it. So for those on a fixed income or limited budget, we're taking your bill over the entire year and dividing it into 12 payments. And since I've started here, we've changed the process slightly in where we automatically adjust the amounts at the final billing August, and we don't change that amount until next August. So I know what the final billing is. It will fill out that piece so we never build a surplus in the year, similar to mortgage companies and things like that. At year end, your account is back to $0, and then we start all over again in January and roll through from there.
Right. Just one more, if I may. Do other municipalities accept credit cards?
Yes, none that I know of offhand.
Non-local?
None local that I know of. Horton does? Horton does.
And I assume it's because of the credit card fees?
There is, yeah.
Right.
And it depends on whether they accept credit cards at their office. Like, we do accept credit cards, but we accept credit cards online where the fee can be transferred to the resident. The issue with that is if a large number of property owners were to take on that piece and we were to then assume that fee, say is 3%, they can quickly then cost other taxpayers who pay with methods that don't cost us anything more money. And it becomes a fighting event where somebody's getting their points, but somebody never wants to use their credit card. That's kind of the challenge that I think most municipalities come into, is those service fees. Debit card is very minimal. My guess would be about $100, I think, most times a month, and most of that is just the rental hours or the actual hardware.
I'm very aware of the credit card service fees. Thank you.
Thanks.
There's no Olmsted's Home Hardware credit card coming? No? Good. Any other questions for our treasurer? Good. The only thing I'll note, thank you for the report, but I'm very interested in, you guys have heard me talk about it before, but the asset management plan to meet the 2025 legislative deadline, that is going to be a whole bunch of work on staff. And we're not going to get away scot-free either. There's going to be a number of decisions that we're going to have to make as part of that process. Tough decisions. So just be prepared. That's coming. I know the treasurer is working on it, but that will be coming shortly. Good. If there's no other questions, CAO?
Yeah, we'll just move it over to the Fire Chief, Jonathan McLaren, for Fire Services update. Thank you.
Thank you. The third quarter was again a busy one for us, with 48 emergency responses, including 3 fires, 26 motor vehicle collisions, a water rescue response, and 2 hazardous materials calls. The third quarter tends to be our busiest, likely at least partially due to the increased population during the tourism season. On top of our emergency responses, extrication fire suppression standby was provided for the demolition derbies at both the Cobden and Beachburg fairs. Work plan and strategic plan progress. The new fireworks bylaw came into effect on September 1st. It was approved earlier in the year. It was timed in such a fashion that it wouldn't hit the peak fireworks season. It'll be work out some of the bugs now and be ready to go full bore in the spring. Site plan for the training site was submitted. Firefighter survival and rapid intervention training session was held in Ottawa, making use of their tower and their facilities to better prepare our members in the case of a firefighter rescue. Some of the key activities in the third quarter were application for a couple of grants. The Fire Protection Grant, which is for initiatives involving prevention of firefighter cancer, as well as a Fire Smart Grant for wildland fire preparedness, specifically hazard mapping. It's a little bit unusual for us. There's not typically a lot of grants available to the fire service, so this is hopefully a good opportunity. A joint rural water training session was held with Admaston, Bromley, and Horton Fire Departments to identify our capabilities and how we operate on scene for whenever we're dealing with automatic or mutual aid response. Review of some alternate records management systems to see if we can find a better fit for our current software. Looking ahead, training site work continues. The pad expected to be completed next month. Looking into options for our volunteer firefighter insurance plan to see if we can find a better coverage or a more fiscally responsible option. NFPA level 1 testing will take place in October. We're ahead of schedule as far as meeting the requirements of mandatory certification, but there's still more work to be done. And we're working towards the transition between summer and winter firefighting operations, getting the trucks prepared, as well as some of our training adjusts for things like chimney fires and carbon monoxide response. Thank you.
Thanks, Fire Chief. Any questions for the Fire Chief? Councillor Tripp.
Yes, through you to the Chief, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, and I hope this isn't a foolish question, but under work plan and strategic plan progress, the last bullet, are you referring here, firefighter rescue, are you referring to firefighters that are in peril themselves?
That's correct.
Okay.
We always have a rapid intervention team established on scene, and their specific task is to rescue a firefighter if they were involved in an emergency, if they became trapped or disoriented inside a structure.
Thanks for that clarification.
Good. Any other questions? Good. I just had one, Fire Chief, just you're not off the hook. The water rescue response that occurred in the last quarter, I'm assuming that involved Pembroke Fire Department?
It actually did and didn't both. It was deemed not to be a true rescue requirement, a stranded boat. So we were able to provide some assistance from shore. They did not respond to that call, but they were notified, and when we gathered more information, it was deemed that they weren't necessary.
Perfect. And then the 2 hazardous material calls, how did they go? Lessons learned or any insights from that experience?
Definitely some lessons learned. They both went well, drastically different. One kind of in a, if we can call Cobden an urban setting, and then one more of a rural. One a chemical, one a biological, being manure. A lot of things learned. Some of the takeaways is the response from the province if we're initiating the provincial teams is a slow one. Kind of knew that to be the case, but it did go well. On our end of things went quite well. It was wrapped up very quickly. The shipper, as required, had a remediation company on hand coming out of, I believe, Ottawa. But they were probably there within about 2.5 hours and had the bulk of the work done probably about 4 or 5 hours in.
Oh, perfect. Deputy Mayor, you have another
I'm
question?
sorry, Mayor, I just thought of something afterwards. Just a question, do we still do the training in the fall, or not the training, but where you go around to all the different homes and do prevention? And also, there was a time they used to go to the schools, and I just don't know if that is still continuing or if it's no longer.
The first initiative, our Wake Up program, we initially started that and did it in the fall. We've since switched that to the spring. We do it in May now. The main reason for it was we were visiting these homes in the evenings, and as you can see, it's quite dark this time of night. It was nicer for, I think, all involved for us to be able to approach these houses, especially the more rural settings, long laneways, during daylight hours. So that switched to May, and yes, we still do get to the schools. We don't always hit Fire Prevention Week exactly, which is in October. We sometimes flex from that a little bit based on availability of staff and things like that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything else for the Fire Chief? Okay, seeing none.
All right, thanks so much. So moving over to the Office of the CAO, so just going to highlight a few things and then pass it over to the clerk to highlight a few more. So back in August, we consolidated and updated the 2024 departmental work plan for council. Further to that, we engaged departmentally on the results of the employee engagement survey in the month of August. Further, we sought council's direction relating to the City of Pembroke's request to form a joint sports PECs facility committee. So that was some significant work around that. And then we supported and announced the successful funding application for the Rural Transit Solution Fund, so in partnership with Bonnechere Valley and North Algona Wilberforce, so that's underway presently. The department also engaged with the County of Renfrew relating to the transfer of our former CN rail line, which council moved some decisions at the in the last month. So for myself, just moving forward, looking ahead, developing and initiating programs that align with the results of the engagement survey. So that looking to come in the next couple months. Over to you, Clerk Miller, if you want to add a few points.
So we wrapped up our time with our summer student. She was a great help. She did a lot of records management. So a lot of the documents, the old historical documents, collecting dust in the basement have been scanned, so we're about, I want to say we're about 2/3 completed. If anyone's ever been into the basement, it was like you walked in past, but it's so cleaned out now. It's like unbelievable difference. We also, I guess looking forward, we're going to be working on a bunch of policies and procedures, so updating procedure bylaw and updating some, are actually creating a responsibility guide for council, new and old, and hopefully updating a few other procedures. The emergency management plan will be coming December 4th, I believe, is the next meeting for approval. A few changes made and hopefully to be passed. So, any questions?
Any questions from council on this one? Okay, seeing none. Thank you.
Great. So moving over to the manager of public works, and certainly be supported, the manager by himself, for the summary or the quarterly report for public works. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so Q3 was very busy with that department also. One of the operating procedure we did was roadside mooring and spraying, which was completed. The mechanic staff newly programmed through doing safeties on equipment, so it's a new drive-on program. Was done was 10 fleet of fire and public works safeties were completed. That's shown in the picture below. The new landfill compactor was delivered in August, and staff have seen a big decrease in landfill airspace usage already. 2 projects were completed. Rapid Road and Colesmith Road were completed during the Q3, and 3 of 6 gravel roads were completed. The major activities, the Water and Wastewater Task Force completed 2 sessions, the 2 final sessions, and the draft presentation was done in September. I'm proud to present, like before, that Road Superintendent Kyle Eady completed his 3 last courses for his CRS program. And also landfill staff toured with towns of Empire and Renfrew, so each community hosted, during one day, hosted their landfill, and to just see what each other municipality does with their landfills. And it was very eye-opening for staff. And just work ahead, where staff are completing a newly lunchroom for the public works staff. And then next month we'll be completing, presenting the new sewer use bylaw. And along with other staff departments, we're working on asset management for next year's new regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Manager of Public Works? Councillor Olmsted, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just wondering how the new process for safeties went. How did our mechanic like the new tablet program? Any conversations with him about that?
Yeah, we have. It's definitely a learning curve. There's a lot more. It takes longer to do an inspection, especially with fire vehicles, for example. There's, I think he was saying it takes almost 1.5, 2 times the length, but efficiency will take time once years come. But it definitely takes longer. But it is a good system where it used to be paper-based. Now it's all electronic.
Right, any conversations I've had with mechanics, it seems to take 2 people to do it now versus 1, as one person's got to be videotaping while the other one's actually showing the parts of the vehicle. So any conversations regarding it's going to take more staff to actually do them?
Yeah, it has for sure. One of the inspections I know for brakes, for example, you have to pull all the tires off and it was had to do before, but it requires sometimes with two people actually showing, like one showing the camera and then one actually showing the actual work.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Bell.
Just in relation to the tours that you did with Arm Prior and Renfrew of their landfills, there's been a number of changes at ours. Was there any major takeaways from visiting Arm Prior and Renfrew that can maybe create more efficiencies at our landfill? Was there anything that, or was it more Arm Prior and Renfrew taking away some of the changes that we've made?
Yeah, very similar. I know, for example, our landfill didn't copy other municipalities, but just for one big improvement is our waste sorting area. It stopped like other staff members from other municipalities. Like it was very neat and compact. Just said one of the biggest takeaways from the Arm Prior and Renfrew was our waste mat, our blast mat, or waste cover mats. Definitely, it wasn't used by them, and I think that was a big takeaway for them.
Anything else? Yes, Councillor Moore.
Just wondering if we were going to get any feedback from Renfrew on the hazardous waste that was open this summer and how much Whitewater may have used it.
Yeah, typically that comes in, so it is closed. Typically we receive that in the first quarter of the following year, typically in the past. But once that will be included.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tabbert.
I've been debating about asking this question because I'm not sure why we're doing this, but why do we need a sewer use bylaw? Do we use it for anything other than, flushing our toilets and letting it go?
Yeah, so it will be presented. The intent is to bring it to a draft for next council meeting. It does regulate the actual what you can put down the sewer, so it's not just households, but for commercial establishments.
Good. I think we look forward to that one. Yes, Councillor Olmsted.
Just to add some context onto that, that was a recommendation from the task force. And it really has to do with watching what people put in the sewers. And as manager has just said, if there's restaurants, you don't want grease going down into the sewers, which causes big headaches down at the sewer treatment plant. Because everything that goes in there has to be treated, right? So there's a number of the items that can go down there that we don't want going down there. So I think that's the recommendation of the task force, was to look at perhaps a sewer use bylaw. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, it's almost like we're getting hints of what's to come. Looking forward to this sewer waste bylaw. It's very exciting. So, any other questions for Manager of Public Works? No? Good. Thank you. Council business.
Yeah, and I was going to have Clerk Miller just summarize that real quick.
So it doesn't look as busy as normal, but it's not that you weren't busy. It's July, I think we had a 6-week break or a 5 or 6 week break. So it does seem smaller, but you still put in a lot of work. So some highlights is, good one, what's a good highlight? Oh yeah, the departmental work plan. We a bunch of minor variance applications. We did our second quarter administrative report for presentations. John Pearden for the Westmeath Parquet. The Watershed celebrated their 10th anniversary. So any questions? Great job, guys.
Good. Any questions on the council business portion? Seeing none. Any last words?
I don't have any additional words. I would just say that we look forward to closing out the year strong and bringing forth the last quarter report in January. Thanks so much.
Good. No final questions from members of council. Deputy Mayor?
No questions. I just want to commend all of staff for all the work that they have done here in this quarter and for this report. It's always so well done, and I know myself, I use it all the time. So thank you, and thank you for all the work. I know there's a lot that has happened in the last little bit, and everybody's been busy, so just appreciate everything. And if you'd pass that on to all staff, Public Works, everybody, just thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think that's exactly Council's feelings on all the work that goes into this report. So, and I think it's a great way for us to be able to provide compact feedback to the public on a quarterly basis, and they have a reference point to go back and look at. Excellent. If there's no other questions or comments, we will come back to our recommendation, which was just to approve the report for administration purposes. And with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you, CAO. Next item is the Mayor's address. And I only have a short one. Since our last council meeting on November 6th, I was hit with a pretty hard, awful head and chest cold and have been unable to attend any meetings over the last 9 days. So I just want to recognize Councillor Moore for representing the council at the Beachburg Remembrance Day ceremony, Deputy Mayor Rieger at the Cobden ceremony, and Councillor Tripp at the Westmeath ceremony. Thanks to Councillor Bell for taking the recreation meeting with staff on November 12th. And again, Deputy Mayor Rieger for leading our closed session on November 14th. So it's truly a group effort, and I appreciate the support. I took every opportunity to sleep and try to get better. So thank you so much. And that ends my report today. Good. Next is the public comments portion. And we'll just, before we get into the reports, we'll take a quick break, but we'll recognize public comments, and I'll just get the clerk to highlight, there's none to be provided orally tonight, correct?
Correct, not orally. We did receive a comment regarding the notice of motion, so if you want to.
Perfect. And I'll just highlight, all of council should have received a hard copy of this public comment. Okay. And if you don't have a copy, or you haven't had a copy, good. Councillor Moore, you've got a copy? Good. And you guys have seen a copy? If not, we'll get hard copies after the break. Okay, so this was received by Janelle Romaine, and I won't go through it, but it's specific to the notice of motion that Councillor Moore put forward on Watchorn Drive, and just provides some feedback for the timing of the study, basically seasonal, and the different times of year by which it's used by large vehicles. This Janelle Romaine is a resident on Watchorn. Okay, so I'll ask that through the break, just make sure that you've taken a read for this. This is public input to a subsequent agenda item. I think it's item 10.1. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good. Anything else we need to recognize, Clerk? Excellent. With that, we'll take a short recess and we'll get back. And welcome back to the Township Whitewater Region's regular council meeting for Wednesday, November 20th. It's 6:05 p.m. We'll call ourselves back to order. We concluded item number 8. We had one public comment which was recognized and confirmed that was received by all members of council. Next on our agenda is reports, and our first one is the 2025 budget. The recommendation is that the council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the OPP Detachment Board 2025 budget as presented and agree to implement an equal shared billing model in the absence of consensus-based alternative. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Tabbert, seconded by Councillor Moore. The clerk wants to correct me. So now that I have the resolution on the table, I'd like to propose a friendly amendment. So the mover and the seconder. So you've approved, the Council of Township Whitewater Region approved the OPP Detachment Board. We want to amend that to say receive and approve. Is that right?
Yeah, receive the budget as presented.
And approve the OPP Detachment Board. So it's just inserting receive the budget presentation and approve the OPP budget. Would you like to see that up on the slide?
No, I just find it strange that we're doing that now because I thought we were talking budget. So are we just doing OPP budget?
The OPP budget is inserted as on one of the slides within the budget presentation.
Inclusive.
Inclusive.
Okay, understand.
Good. Is that friendly amendment acceptable to the mover and the seconder?
Yes.
Good. And I'm seeing both nodded, so yes. And that works, clerk, from your perspective? Okay, so we received a friendly amendment to the resolution that's on the table, and with that, I'll hand it back over to the CAO.
As a point of clarification with respect to the resolution that's before council, or the motion before council, is we received that budget that was presented to members of council earlier by a board member, and the request was that our local council move a resolution that they approve of the 2025 board budget and that they also agree to the equal shared billing. So my thought is that as part of the budget presentation today, which is the second review of the budget, we will speak to that briefly to some degree because it's already been presented to the members of council, but we would get the resolution passed now and we could share that back with the board to say our council is agreeable to the budget and the distribution of cost, and also it helps our treasurer continue with his budget. So it's kind of a two-part thing. So, and I'll pass it back over to you, Treasurer McGonigal. I mean, council's seen this budget on a couple of occasions, and there's a few edits where we're trying to mitigate some impacts. But through you, Treasurer, go ahead.
Thank you, CAO.
Sorry, just hold 1 second.
Sure.
Is there a point of order or something?
Yeah, no, sorry, if you can, just, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up with all the rewording of the recommendations. Can you just read the new recommendation again, please, just so I'm clear?
Perfect. I'll get the clerk to do that.
That the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the budget presentation, receive the budget presentation and approve the OPP Detachment Board 2025 budget as presented and agree to implement an equal sharing billing model in the absence of a what's that word?
Consensus?
Thank you. Based alternative, and that's it, sorry.
So, do we need to clean up that last bit to implement an equal sharing bill? You're talking about the OPP Detachment Board again, right?
So if you're wanting to amend it, we need a motion. We need a motion to do that.
Yeah, he's just asking if.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that just the last portion of that, the verbiage, the 2025 budget as presented, and agree to implement an equal sharing billing model. You're referring specifically to the OPP Detachment Board budget.
That's correct? The intent, correct?
Right. So if I don't know how I would word it, but I'd like to maybe add something in there that's I don't want to get that conflicted with, you know, we have our entire 2025 budget as well, included in that one sentence.
Thank you, Councillor Olmsted. What if we just severed these two recommendations into two resolutions under the same agenda item? I'm looking at the clerk. Is that okay?
So we've already approved the motion. Oh, okay, let me think about how.
But he could just move a motion to sever that portion of the resolution into two parts. Get a seconder and we can do it.
Yes.
Good? Okay, so if you would like to move that to sever the OPP portion of the resolution from receiving the budget.
Sure, in the interest of clarity, I would go ahead and move that.
Perfect. Can I get a seconder? Yes, Councillor Tripp. Perfect. Olmsted. And Tripp. And just before we move on, I know the treasurer is just biting at the bit. He just wants to get into these 40 slides. But this is important because in 10 years from now, someone's going to look back and try to make sense of it. The first resolution, which is moved by Councillor Tabbert and Councillor Moore, or sorry, I'll read the proposed severing from Councillor Olmsted and Councillor Tripp, and then we'll vote on the severance, and that will set us up. First one is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the 2025 budget presentation. First resolution. Second resolution, the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve the OPP Detachment Board 2025 budget as presented and agree to implement an equal shared billing model in the absence of consensus-based alternative. Second resolution. Two resolutions. Same agenda item. Any questions with respect to the proposed severance? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it is now severed into two resolutions under the same agenda item. Good? Okay, and back to staff. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Olmsted.
Thank you, Council. So this is the second review of the budget for Council. If we don't count the public meeting as a full review, it's just a public delegation or public presentation of the budget. So this is going to be more compact won't be a fulsome review, but it's just of the changes and highlights since the public meeting and the original presentation that was presented back in November. And just to your point, it's 79 slides, sorry. But so here's the budget schedule. So we're here at the November 20th meeting. So this is an all-encompassing final budget presentation, council deliberation, then review and direction. So at each section, user fees and all alike, I'll be asking for direction from council. I'll be asking for direction from council with two options. One is approve it as presented and bring forward for bylaw, or the second option is to whatever amendments council would like to see, and then those will be put in before it's been brought to the bylaw. And then December 4th meeting is what's proposed to be the day we can pass the bylaw for the 2025 budget. So just our mission and vision statements again, the Township of Whitewater Region delivers a municipal service to a welcome community, and the Township of Whitewater Region maintains a rural quality of life by balancing sustainability and growth. Again, we look at how much is 1% levy on the 1% levy increase. So last year, our total levy was $7.195 million, and 1% of that, $71,950. So we look at the property tax equation again. The tax levy itself equals our assessment, which is provided by MPAC, times the rates that are required to generate the actual levy, broken down between the residential, commercial, industrial, farm properties. So operating versus capital, so it's our total expenses minus grants, user fees, transfer to reserves, that's what equals the levy, and that's what we actually tax or put onto our residents and require residents to pay to fund the operations of the municipality. So the levy does not cover capital that's not covered through grants, CCBF, OCIF. CCBF is the Canada Community Building Fund, OCIF is the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, or any of our reserves. Operating not covered through grants, the two grants that we typically receive is UMP, so it's Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, and our Canada Summer Jobs. So we just wanted to highlight, and this was a request from a few councillors, is to talk about the application-based grants that the township is applying for, that staff are going through and applying for, to try and limit the actual increase that's required through the levy. So this supplements the levy and requires us not to add this onto taxation for people to do different programs. And I'll highlight them. I'll go through, and if staff or if council has any questions on them, I can direct to different staff. So the Flood Hazard Identification and Mapping Program, the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant, Ontario Transit Investment Fund, Fire Smart Community Grant, the Fire Protection Grant, Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund Intake 2, Housing Enabling Core Servicing Fund, Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund, New Horizons for Seniors, Seniors Active Living Center Program, Enabling Change, Accessibility, and our Canada Summer Jobs. Now, some of these have already been applied for and received. Some of them have been applied for and not received, but I don't think there's any on this list at this point in time that have not been received or have any notification back. But if council wants to ask any questions on these, I'll kind of give a pause at this section if they have any questions.
Any questions? No, I love the fact that we're taking every effort to make sure that we're applying when possible, and we acknowledge the staff effort that takes.
Thank you. Yeah, the goal of this is always to make the tax dollar, the amount that we're required to pull from the taxpayer in order to make the operations work the way they do, make the capital investments what is required as the municipality, stretch as far as it can. And this supplements that piece using the dollars that are granted through other levels of government. So this is the breakdown of every tax dollar collected. This slide will take a slight shift, and this is just foreshadowing, take a slight shift for the 2025 year, but normally what it is 31% or 31 cents of every dollar goes to the county, 14 cents goes to education, 47 cents is actually kept by the municipality in order to do our day-to-day operations and capital works, and then 8 cents of that goes to our policing. So this slide was shown in both other presentations. It's a comparison between of all the municipalities in the county where we sit with our current tax rate based on $100,000 of assessment. So this is countywide. This includes both municipal portion, the county portion, and education. And I've added the arrow in to kind of illustrate where we sit as Whitewater Region in amongst the grouping of the 18 municipalities. The city of Pembroke's been included there. The orange line is the trend line of 2024's increases compared to other municipalities. So key highlights, what comes into here is the operating increase which was directed by council through the council direction was 2%, and that's net of growth. I spoke to that earlier. The key pieces to this was affordability, maintain current levels of service, inflation, our 3% average June to June, and then our insurance, which is our annual, which we have received back, and I'll talk to a little later, but with an 8.2% increase is what our insurance has been quoted back, and that has been included in this budget presentation. The piece, the star here, the asterisk that I'm noting is the percentage here does not include OPP billing increases per the annual billing statement, and we'll be speaking to this very shortly. Capital has an increase of 4.2% of the levy to make up the overall 6.2. Funding sources for capital comes from Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OCIF, Canada Community Building Fund, CCBF, and then our taxes, reserves, and reserve funds. The 4.2 is the tax portion of this, of what comes up to what we can have for value, their money that can be spent for capital. So the criteria, the must have, can't fail, the timing is right, is either annual replacement or strategically important. Oop, I'm supposed to remove this. Oh, wait, no. Public meeting input. So I wanted to put out in a slide to talk about the actual public input that came from our meeting back on October 16th. So we had one question regarding the purpose of the streetscaping budget line item from a resident at the meeting, which council or staff provided an answer to at that time. The streetscaping is the beautification of the actual township side and pieces like that. Traditionally has been used for our road signs and things like our wayfinding signs and things like that. What the hall rental usage charge is included from services and what services they get from staff. and that was clarified. Question of why Crawford Street was not included in the capital list, and it's similar to the request. The next question now was a request for the portion of Zion Line from West Ross Road to Forster Fall Road be considered for 2025. Both of those came to the same answer of the ability of funds and the accessibility of funds to actually provide those two assets was not available for 2025. That's why the road that was chosen. But it's not that it's not thought of or to be looked at in the future. And then the request for bulk pickup of garbage to be included. And that has already been, and I think it's noted later on in this agenda as a notice motion to look into that person. So it could become a 2026 amendment to the budget, but at this point in time, it's not included. So our transfer to reserves, there's only a couple changes here. One of them is waste management. With going through the actual contract negotiation phase, the actual cost has seen a slight decrease. So when that decrease happens, we're still collecting the same amount of revenue from the waste collection charge, the curbside collection charge. So that revenue is automatically put back into a reserve. So instead of where it used to be $20,000 under the waste management side for 2025, it's now $30,000. So just still a little decrease overall from prior year, but it was increased by $10,000. No other real changes to this slide. So this is the first part for council direction. So accept the transfers to reserves as presented by staff and bring forward for bylaw approval. Or if there's changes that you would like to see, it's amend the transfers to reserves as presented by staff and bring forward for bylaw approval.
Good. Looking for consensus from council. Is there any amendments that you'd like to see as presented by the treasurer with respect to transfers to reserves?
I welcome any questions too.
Amendments, questions, that's right. Okay, I see none. I will take that as consensus for number one.
Perfect.
Accepting
Thank you.
the transfers to reserves as presented.
Thank you. So next we'll look at our non-taxation generated revenues. So this is our user fees, our grants and things like that. Typically this falls under just user fees though that we actually look at the budget time. This was not in the presentation for public meeting or the earlier meeting, but this is not a dollar value change, it's more of a clarification change. So it's to take the kennel license, which has been noted as being a per week charge, and turn it into a per year charge, which is technically, I believe, I'm looking at the clerk, what it's supposed to be per our bylaw piece, I believe. Same thing with the backyard chicken license. It was noted as a per license, and it goes from a per license to a per year. So the really dollar value is no change because that's the way they've still been billing. It's just a clarification piece. So whenever we actually go through and do the bylaw and bring the user fees forward, it's just a clarification on the unit of measure. User fees under the recreation side. Under this table, there's really been no great change except for if you see down under ice, spring hockey. This was a request by one of our user groups to be able to offer spring hockey to a later ice season. It was never charged in 2024, and the proposed cost is $150, and that would be the per hour rate, and that's a new cost. Recreation charges continued. There's really no change to this one from the originally what was presented. I just want to make sure that all user fee changes are presented again to council. This again, similar situation. Since the public meeting and the first presentation, there's been no changes to this slide. Again, it's just a re-presentation to council for the proposed changes. So we're proposing leaving the waste collection fee, still remains the 2 bags per week and unlimited recycling while the recycling program is on. And then once that process is complete, we would revisit this fee again in 2026. So it would remain at the $168 charge. And then the private road sign and the utility crossing permit under transportation. Again, there's no change here. So it's to remove the private road sign from the actual user fee bylaw and put the utility road crossing permit as a no charge. So is there any questions before I do the council direction?
Councillor Tripp?
I have a couple, if I may, Mr. Mayor. With the spring hockey, what's new here? Is it new that the ice plant is going to be in operation longer in the spring? Is that what's new? And then we're going to charge an additional fee?
I'll actually pass that off to the manager of community services.
This was a request that we received from the Beachburg Recreation Association. They would like to run spring ice, and they suggested that fee. So we're adding it to our bylaw, so they're able to charge that fee and run April ice. There's no intention to run ice in Cobden, and we have not heard from Westmeath that they want to extend their season.
Thank you. I know this was presented to us before, but after having time to look at it, I've come up with new questions. The kitchen rental only in Cobden, is that something that is often requested?
It hasn't been, but it's an opportunity to be able to rent the space for the kitchen use. When you use the kitchen, you're using additional power that you're not using when you're renting the meeting space. So that rental fee would be used for a daily rental of the kitchen only.
Okay, thank you. And finally, if I may, the utility road crossing permit. I'm wondering if a farmer were to request that they put tile drainage across the road. There's no permit fee, but is there any staff time that's going to be used up with somebody wanting to do any type of work on our road allowance? And so if staff time is required, I think the user should pay something for that. So I got thinking about this after, and I'm just wondering if that might be the case. Thank you.
Pass that to the manager of public works to answer.
You are right. When staff took that, looking at was more for utilities that would benefit the community. But you are right that if a farmer wants to put a line across, usually there's an agreement. A cost could be provided in that, but maybe that one item could be worded that it was non-utility fee, maybe versus the utility fee wording on it.
So just so I can clarify, this fee is proposed, the fee that we're actually making no charge now is specific to utilities. Natural gas, power, fiber, something to that effect. What Councillor Tripp is mentioning is non-utility access to the road allowance for personal purposes.
That is correct.
Good. And you're proposing a separate fee for that?
No, what I would just direct the members of council to, we do have under the planning fees, a development, road, or other agreements, a fee attributed to that for the preparation of the agreement for consideration by council of $250. So I would say that in the private property owner, that's what fee we would charge, which is $250, the same as that, but under the planning fees.
Perfect. That makes sense. Councillor Tripp?
It certainly does. Thanks.
Perfect. Did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Good. Any other member of council, any questions? Good. I just have to come back to manager of community services again on the spring hockey proposed fee. That's for any time of day, like we don't need to get into different times of day and.
No, that was their request.
Perfect.
And because we have no intention on running spring ice.
Yeah, so anything is in effect, anything beyond the end of March. Perfect. Good. And Councillor Olmsted.
Just a house cleaning thing. So on the user fee changes transportation, utility road crosser permit, where there's no charge, that'd be a minus $250, right? There's no charge for 2025 versus there was a fee for 2024?
That's correct, yes. Yeah,
I know, it's just for the presentation.
Nope, noted. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good catch. And Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. The user fee changes, the baled agricultural plastic used to be no charge and now it's $107.50, is that correct? Or what is that different, or what is that?
That's correct. So previous, we had a pilot program that has ended. That used to be take baled egg plastics and be shipped off. That program has ended. So now it's, even if it's baled, it has to go to the landfill, and then we're charging the tonnage fee versus it would be free.
If I may, Mayor. So that would be if it's baled. So if a farmer just brings his bags, like the big bags, you just pay the normal landfill price.
That's correct.
Right, it's not $107, it would be whatever it is going through the scale at the landfill.
That's correct. It would be per ton. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of that. Thanks.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, I see none. So now that you just got to confirm the council direction, there's the two options. And unless somebody has a suggested amendment, I see none. We will go with option number 1, which is to accept the user fees as presented by staff.
Thank you. So next we look into the general operating adjustments. So salary and wages, there's been a slight change here to account for the employee benefits increase over the year. I did not include it whenever I originally did. I included it in the rate amount for the levy. I did not include it in this slide whenever I did the presentation prior. So looking between the 2 years, the $4,188,980 is a township-wide total salaries and benefits. For 2025, it would be $4,307,925. That includes the 3% overall COLA increase, which is based on June to June, as well as the proposed 15% benefit increase from our benefits provider. So these slides just show now the new breakdown between the departments, from council all the way down to drainage. And this slide just goes through the water, wastewater changes, very, very minimal changes. So protections to persons and property adjustment. The only adjustment in this section is under policing. And this is where I'll need council direction. So policing, what it was originally presented, the 2024 expenses was $1,010,784, and then the expenses was $1,061,000. I had accounted for a 3% increase to our policing because they had a new contract piece going through, so I accounted for that as well as an estimate in a police service board increase. Now, once we've received the annual billing statement from OPP, their 2025 expenses is $1.259 million. So their overall increase year over year was $228,611, 22.62% increase. So that increase is made up of the OPP year over year increase, $166,000, OPP 2023 reconciliation amount, which is where when they redid their contracts, the years that were affected for salaries for their uniform and non-uniform or civilian police officers was 4.75 for 2023, 4.5 for 2024, 2.75 for 2025, and 2.75 for 2026. A 4-year agreement. So what happens is whenever they do their billing, they have to reconcile back because they're back billing us for 2023, and that's where this reconciliation amount of $62,611 comes from. And then the Police Services Board, as you all seen in the presentation earlier, our equal billing amount is around $16,700, I believe. I'm leaving it at this point in time at the $20,000 presented because there's an opportunity, was been directed that there could be an opportunity to revisit their budget midway through the year if they haven't budgeted high enough and request more funds. So just kind of leave that little buffer room in there for any adjustments that may be needed, or if the system of their budget changes. So these are the options that staff has created to present to council. So option 1 is to add the entire OPP cost increase year over year and 2023 reconciliation. to the operating portion of the levy, which equates to a 1.7% overall increase. Just as a note, that option 1 is an additional $11.35 on $100,000 of assessment. Option 2 is to add only the year-over-year increase to OPP costs to the operating portion of the levy, which equates for a 0.83% overall increase, and fund the 2023 reconciliation amount through our working capital reserve. This is the little more of a breakdown of option 2. So if 2023 OPP reconciliation is funded through the working capital reserve in 2025, due to the salary increases agreed to through the collective agreements, the result would be the following reconciliation amount would be incurred by the township in 2026. I did a quick calculation on that. It comes out to about $148,300 is our reconciliation amount. So if we were to fund this year's amount through our working capital reserve and continue to do the same process again in 2025 for our 2026 budget, we'd be pulling a total of about $210,911 out of reserve to fund this operation because it's prior year's amounts. That would take our working capital balance, which is right now $976,999. It would leave us about $766,000. And I do want to remind council that working capital is generally for emergency purposes only and not generally used for this, but it is one of the biggest reserves we have, so that's why it's the one chosen at this point in time. Per my note, so if this is not funded through the reserves in 2026, but funded through the reserve in 2025, as option 2 is proposing, without any other increases to the operating levy, we would see a reconciliation. There would be an increase of 2.95% automatically on the levy due to the cost of this increase with the increase of the estimated reconciliation and their year-over-year increase. And I just put a note that 2026 would be the last year of catch-up reconciliation amounts because they'd be renegotiating a new contract in 2027. So the points to remember here is that if we work through a working capital portion of it, at some point along the lines, that amount that's being pulled out of reserve would need to be replenished at some point because it limits our actual ability to fund our capital assets ourselves, should we want to. Because we technically could borrow from our own working capital reserve to fund one of those assets, but by not collecting that fund for capital, it could potentially put us in a more delicate area. But again, it's completely up to council as to which way they would like to direct staff. So this comes to the council direction side. So it's accept option 1 to increase the operating portion of the levy by 1.7% to account for the increased OPP costs, bring the total operating to 3.7% as presented by staff, and bring forward to council or bring forward to bylaw approval. Or second option is accept option 2 to increase the operating portion of the levy by 0.83% to account for the increased OPP costs, bring the total operating to 2.83 as presented by staff. That the piece I missed in this one is funding through the reconciliation through reserve. Yep.
Good. Thank you, Treasurer. I know that's pretty complex and the options. But thank you for going through them. I'm just going to go to our lead for finance to see if he can offer any thoughts or comments on this before I open it up to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My initial thought is this is the exact reason the province should be taking care of this. This is the equivalent of the province giving teachers and nurses new contracts and municipalities paying for it. We have zero say in the contract negotiations. We have zero input into it. We basically get handed a bill, and in this case, it's we've got to reconcile back to 2023. We're always going to have to reconcile back, as the treasurer showed you. In 2024, it's going to be a big reconciliation. So unfortunately, we're at a point where we do our budgets early in the year, and we get our homework done, and we're making great headway. and then you get something like this thrown at you, which really throws you off track. So as the treasurer said, you know, we had a nice budget presented. I can't remember what we did present overall in operating. What was the initial operating presented?
So the original operating was 2.
2%, right?
So it was a grand total of 6.2% as an overall total levy. The first option brings us to a 7.9% overall levy, and the second option brings us to a 7.03%.
So virtually, because of this wrench thrown at us, you're almost doubling what was presented to you for operating, from a 2 to a 3.7, which is horrendous in my opinion. Having said that, I support option 1. Is the reason for supporting option 1 really is we can't go back and start redoing our entire budget. And we're not just looking at this year and next year, and we're trying to get to a place we're looking years down the road, which is why the treasurer's showing us the working capital reserve portion. And we're trying to get ahead of this thing rather than just looking at it, you know, year to year. We've got a plan for the future. Having said that, I do support option number 1. It's a bite to the taxpayer this coming year. If not, we're going to keep eating the working capital reserve, and at some point we're going to have to face the facts that we have to make a decision to move forward. So I think option number 1 in this case kind of cuts it off and moves us forward. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Olmsted. Is that any questions or other comments from members of council? Councillor Tripp?
Yes, I have to agree with my friend Councillor Olmsted. This is just really terrible news for our ratepayers, but I don't think that it's a good idea to kick this can down the road. This reserve is more for emergencies and this sort of doesn't qualify, and we don't know what emergencies may lay ahead for us. And so I also am going to support the recommendation number 1 from the treasurer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Moore?
I think the same way. There's only one taxpayer, so either we pay it now or we pay it later. And if we pay it later, what else is going to be thrown at us that we may not be aware of? So I think we should bite the bullet now, and I agree with item number 1.
Good. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I too will support number 1 as well. But I do just want to add that I think every opportunity we have to advocate on our behalf or on behalf of all municipalities in the province of Ontario to get this turned back to the way it was previous to 2010, where it was dealt with through the provincial, that's where we have to get back to. So I think if it's going through AMO, if it's any time we can get it in their face, I think it's something that we have to do. We have to advocate to get that back. We cannot continue this. We cannot as municipalities, as small municipalities. Thank you, Mayor.
Good. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Tappert.
Okay, so we're talking about the 2025 budget, but in here you say this is not funded to the reserve in 2026. So I'm not sure where 2026 is coming from.
So I'm just looking forward at the future amount. So what happens is if you don't fund the $62,000 that is the 2023 reconciliation, that means that full amount, not a portion of that $140,000 coming into the next year is funded. So then that decision of that 2.95 becomes the issue for 2026, because then it's a bigger impact for the future budgets. It compounds. You're kind of mitigating it where you're putting $62,000 being used in the 2025 budget. When that rolls to the 2026 budget, we take that off the top of that reconciliation of $148,000. and that's what's left is about $80,000 to actually be included in the budget. It's a 1.25% instead of the full 2.95. I also want to make mention to the reason we were able to get this to the 1.7% was because UMF actually increased our funding. So UMF partially hurt us, municipalities, but at the point in time, it was not due to OPP cost. It was due to council's calls to them about rural and northern municipalities needing more funding. So the province added another $50 million to the overall, all municipalities, 444, and did a division out. So some municipalities seen no increase, and we seen a $77,000 increase. So this $77,000 increase is what's been applied against the OPP billing. If the OPP billing wouldn't have gone anywhere, we would have actually been able to cut another % off of our operating, just as a picture. So it's been directly applied to the OPP billing, and I had already increased OPP by 3% to account for what I thought the actual salaries would be. I was vastly underestimating what they were actually going to reconcile as. So whenever that 3% increase with the compounded increase to OMF is how we were able to get this 1.7. Because overall, that $228,000 increase, if it would have been without any other funds put to it, it would have been a 3.18% increase to our levy. So just with this calculation piece and the kind of pre-planning and getting some extra funding from the provincial government through UMF, we were able to get to 1.17 or 1.7. Not to say that next year UMF may be increased again, which might, at that point in time, we'll have already financed the reconciliation amount for the most part for 2025, and we won't have to see this as a issue again in 2026. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna, 2 parts that he answered there. First was your question, and then to come back to the UMF increase. You should lead with the good news. We could have gone down by a percentage.
Yes.
In our own levy for next year, had this OPP. So it's not a 1.7 increase due to OPP, it's a 2.7 increase that we're choosing to fund using the UMP increase, which is very frustrating from we fought so hard to have the UMP increased, and then they just put it in one hand and took out more in the other hand. Yeah. Okay, and I'm going to go back to Councillor Tabbert's first question, or your question, about the 2026 and funding out of the reserves. So think of it from this perspective, is that if we don't increase the levy by the amount that is needed this year, and we basically take from a reserve that exists, the levy doesn't the next year's levy doesn't recognize that there's been an increase because we took from a reserve. So the next year, we have to pay back that reserve and still pay for the increase that we avoided by just taking from the reserve. I don't know, does that help at all?
No, but I'll sit down with Curtis after and talk to him. This is because I'm like, so we're saying that if we don't take it through the reserves, we automatically start with a 2.95% increase into 2026.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
That's good. We can take the time now because there'll be people that are not understanding.
So, okay, so we're increasing our levy by 1.7 to 3.7.
Yes.
Whereas before this discussion occurred, it would have been
2%.
Without the OPP.
Yeah, exactly.
Without the OPP prior.
Right, exactly. So the OPP increase, I had done a estimated increase at that point in time, and then this is with their final billing actually provided to the township, and that's where this new number has come from, just based on my estimate being drastically low, what it's resulted in.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate this.
Good, thank you. Councillor Tripp?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you stated, and just for clarification, you stated when you were explaining this to Councillor Tabbert that next year we would have to replace the money in reserves. I don't think we would have to, but it would be short-sighted if we didn't. Am I correct on that?
No, you're exactly right.
Okay,
That
thank
would
you.
still be a council decision, but we'd have to recognize that the reserves have been reduced for non-emergency purpose. Yeah, good. Does that make it clear for everyone?
Do we have a reserve that's for non-emergencies then? No? Like, do we not have an OPP reserve budget like we do for wastewater?
No, so we have specific reserves. Working capital is one of our biggest reserves because it's where our general surplus goes into, but we don't actually put money out because it's direct building from the province, and we don't have any really, we haven't seen changes like this ever, like not in my time of seeing it this drastic of an increase. So putting money in away was never an issue. It was always what the billing was, and whatever small increase it was in a year was just allocated to that year, and it was equally done. All of our other reserves are like water and wastewater are mandatory reserves to have to redo those services, and that's why we put money away for those ones. But other reserves are tiny compared to the actual working capital reserve.
Thank you.
Good. Last comment I'll make, and then we'll just make sure we have full consensus, is the Roma board, as well as the Eastern Ontario's Wardens Caucus, is working very hard to advocate to the province on the impact of this increase in the billing with no control. It essentially is just like Councillor Olmsted said. It's like the education tax. This is just the OPP tax, and in our little pie chart, you know, I'd love to be able to just carve out another piece and say this is another uncontrolled piece that we're collecting for and passing on to the province using property tax instead of sales tax or income tax. But as the Deputy Mayor said, we're going to continue to advocate. We're going to press at the county level, and hopefully this will get recognized by the provincial government. Good. Any final comments? Is there a consensus on selecting option 1? Is there anybody who'd like to speak against option 1? Okay, I see none. So council direction is option 1, to accept option 1 as the increase to the operating portion of the levy by 1.7% to the account for the increased OPP costs, bringing the total operating to 3.7 as presented by staff.
Thank you. The next one.
Sorry, Councillor Olmsted.
So just as part of the presentation, back to that, your pie chart, I think it was page number 6.
Yep.
So that's going to alter that pretty substantially, right? Probably another 2 points, probably, roughly. I just did some quick math, and it's like 9.9% now.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I think it's 3%, like closer to 3% rounded, but yeah.
Right. So as part of the final presentation, I would like that noted. Maybe. No, I didn't see one in here. Maybe there is one in here that I didn't catch.
No, and actually, it crossed my mind to redo it, and I didn't before I
I would just like the final one in the final presentation noted. I want the taxpayer to see that I think all of those percentages have been almost bang on for 10 years now, roughly. And this is a big one, so I really want that part of the final presentation, please.
Okay. I will add that in into this presentation whenever it's posted online.
Right, thank you.
Excellent, thank you for the recommendation. Good, all right, let's keep going, please.
So transportation adjustments is the next one. There's no really any change here. It's just that in the original presentation, Kerr Line was not noted as the gravel portion. It had a different name. It was just a clerical error. So it's just being re-showing to show what roads are going to be part of the gravel program for 2025. So environmental services adjustments. So the big changes in here between the original percentage is to your left, and our amended is to your right. So recycling went from 364 to 375 to 2025 to 186,300, a decrease of 178, and it's due to the decrease for the contract and through our contract side. Waste, same thing with an increase, and then our landfill, the only reason you see a slight increase is due to the benefit side. And I'll actually ask the manager of Public Works just to speak briefly on the contract negotiation stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. One of the big changes next year that with recycling, changing from being paid through the township through CMO, so the township will be no longer as of June 1st. We'll be as of July 1st. We no longer we'll be paying a portion towards recycling. And right now, our current contract with our garbage and recycling contractor ends at the end of March. So we are in contract negotiations to extend the recycling from our current end date to when we switch to the pros looking after the service, and then also extending to extend the recycling for 1 year. There was a change on the actual weighting of there's one total price in the contract amount, where I believe it was 44%. 44% garbage and 66%.
Yeah, 56%.
So 50% in recycling. The contract came back and said to be 50-50, with an additional stop counts increases from the last contract. There's been a lot of development in Whitewater, and that was a bigger change. And there will be hopefully the next meeting. Our next few meetings will be actually staff will be bringing a report to council on the extension of that contract.
Thank you. So next we look at recreational and cultural services adjustments. There's not a big change here, a little bit for wages in the fact that the actual change for the benefits side. But the biggest change here is the noting of the CN Rail Trail. So we were able to review the budget again and find some cost efficiencies enough to allocate some money to the rail trail for the lease agreement for going forward with the county's proposal and the creation of that trail. For the costs, originally it was in the presentation or the report that was presented to council, it would remain unfunded. But we were able to put together some money for the 2025 budget to fund it in 2025 to avoid having those unfunded projects going forward in future years. So this comes to our operating levy. So this just shows a comparison between our option 1 and option 2 as to how it looked. And since council has chosen option 1 for our OPP side, so the operating expenses is $10,285,650. Operating revenue is $3,364,176, leaving a balance to be funded by a levy of $6.9 million. This is just our operating side. This does not include our capital. So the total increase is a 4.3. Our growth, which I've estimated at this point in time, is 0.6%. Brings us to a total increase of 3.7. I should note on this slide, as good as time as any, is that if our growth increases any more between now and the end of the year, I know December is not that far off, but if it increases any more along that time, that will decrease this amount that will be seen by the taxpayer, similar to how prior years have happened. Last year we passed a 6.2% rate, but the actual piece that was actually seen by the taxpayer due to our growth, which I'll go to this slide because it paints a very clean picture, that growth allowed us to only bill the taxpayer 3.25. So even though our levy increased, the actual amount of money we needed increased to 6.2%, we only needed to tax each individual home 3.25 because there was more of a division of that taxation based out on the base for the new homes being built, for all the construction happening, all that new assessment growth. We're coming back to pre-COVID levels by my assumption. So that's why the proposed is 0.6 currently, but I'm not estimating any higher. I'm using the actuals as to what we received so far. So then there's just council direction. So it's accept the general operating adjustments, excluding that OPP cost, which you've already provided direction on, as presented by staff, and bring them forward for bylaw approval. Or if there's any amendments that the council would like to bring, amend the general operating adjustments, excluding OPP costs, as presented by council, bring them forward to council bylaw.
Thank you, Treasurer. Any questions or comments on this section? Yeah, Councillor Tripp.
Yes, I noted something that maybe I could have an explanation for. In the Recreation, Cultural Services and Parks, third bullet, as presented, there was an expected $16,000 decrease, but when this budget was amended, there is a $24,000 increase, which is a difference of $40,000. And so I'm just wondering what the explanation for that is.
Sure. So that was the additional of that CN Rail Trail money. That was originally not in the budget that was presented originally. It was a brand new line item. So what has happened is it's been included now into the budget. So you add that plus the benefits line, and I actually noted that I did not update the wages number, which should have been. That's what makes up that total change of the $40,000 from going from negative to positive. It's that rail trail piece, which is never a line item ever presented in the presentations before. But now that we have that amount and the report that came forward, it was tasked by the CIO to staff to find that amount of money in the budget, which we were able to do without adding an actual increase for that and having to fund that in our 2026 budget. As noted before, council tries to not push unfunded things to the future, pay for things as we go, so we don't have to keep looking back at certain things. And that's why we tried to include that, and we were able to include a good portion of the costs of that going forward for the trail maintenance and things like that going forward.
And just to follow, how much a cost are we going to see per year for CN?
So for CN, this will be the bigger cost of the year, but we're looking at estimated about $25,000 per year for the next 5.
Okay.
Estimated. And these are all part of the negotiation pieces, but we wanted to put something aside to the budget in order to actually put something on the paper for going forward. So there's a line item for it, and we've allocated something to it, so the whole amount is not unfunded.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I could, Treasurer, I'll just add, so this line item includes the $10,000. So the memorandum of understanding was brought forward to council as a result of our negotiations with the County of Renfrew. One of the components in the MOU, which was presented to council gave us direction to move forward with the MOU, is that we would contribute $10,000 a year for 5 years to support the operating cost. In addition to that, we've inquired with our insurance provider, what would it cost to ensure that we could cover ourselves for the environmental liability? And that is also included in this amount, which is I think about $15,000 a year. And we've also included some legal costs to support that disposition of the land to the County of Renfrew. So moving forward after 5 years, we'd see a $15,000 cost through our insurance provider for the environmental liability, which we've decided to retain. And we lose that $10,000 operating and the legal costs around it. So we're probably 25 for the next 5 years and then down to 15. Thanks.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions for staff on this section? Okay, seeing none, is there any, is there general consensus for item number 1 to accept as presented? Yes, Councillor Olmsted, or you're voting? You're just saying, you're agreeing. Okay, so general consensus, everybody is in agreement. Okay, thank you. Item number 1, accepting it as presented.
Perfect. So the next piece we'll move into is capital and special projects. This one really has seen very little change, so I'll go quickly through. So our Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, which is our OCIF, was confirmed $742,785, which is a 15% increase over last year, as predicted. And the only change this year versus other years for the allocation of that funds is we're allocating a portion to our water wastewater rates. So $378,820 is being allocated to water wastewater, and the remainder is part of our general capital. So OCIF itself is calculated using current replacement values of our assets. Water wastewater assets being a large portion of the assets that actually generate this fund, and that's why the percentage to allocation is how it's calculated. So again, eligible projects are capital core infrastructure or new core infrastructure, and capital maintenance for renewal, and then asset management software training and third-party condition assessments. Canada Community Building Fund, this has also been confirmed. It's formerly known as the gas tax, provincial gas tax, $236,620 for 2025. Eligible projects include construction renewal of material enhancement or infrastructure, remediation and development of brownfield sites, and initiatives to strengthen municipal's ability to plan for the future. I will note that OCIF is more related to roads, core infrastructure, those type of items. Canada Community Building Fund is actually more flexible in the projects that it can be chosen for. Hence why over the last couple of years we've actually gone more for recreation projects to be funded through this source of funding. And it's a similar case again this year. So 2025 taxation for capital, so the 4.2% is what this is. So total we'll have $885,042 generated from 2025 the tax levy. So $582,000 of that is coming forward from our 2024 levy. We're growing that by the 4.2%, which equates to $302,190. Other reserves are working capital development charges, which I mentioned in the quarterly report, just a little over $305,000 now, and then water and wastewater. I should note that at this point in time, nothing is being proposed to come out of development charges, but hopefully in the future, the growth will show there to actually start using those funds again to supplement the levy. So capital and special projects, there's been no changes here from what was originally presented. So it's still the banners and streetscaping at a cost of $50,000 through the levy. Our electric vehicle charging station through the grant. So the grant paid a good portion of this. I believe it was 75% or 80%. And then the remaining portion to install charging stations and purchase the actual electric vehicle is $35,000. It's been noted here as the ORPC reserve, which is the reserve for funds that we receive from our dividends and interest payments from our promissory note with Otter River Power Corporation. But on one of the first few slides I presented, we talked about application-based funding. Right now there's funding out for the Ontario Transit Fund, and we are applying for that. So in the event that we receive that money, it will actually go to this, and we will not pull from the reserve. We'll bring back to council as in the money will stay in reserve, and we'll use the grant so that the project is fully grant funded. So under environmental services is the landfill compactor, which has already been purchased and already seeing great benefits for. So the debenture has already been incurred, but in 2025 is when we see our payments for that capital start being paid, so that's why it's included for 2025 budget. And the ECA amendment application fee, the project has already been done. This is just to change our actual ECA to agree for it, the $22,500. General government, computers and software for $30,000 funded from our levy. Asset management update for compliance, so that's to meet our next deadline, the July 1st deadline, $40,000, and that's through OCIF. And then billing condition assessment updates, which is just updating our financial information, as well as actual assessment of town hall at 25. And then upgrading our website at $17,700, funded through the levy. And again, no changes here. The fire tanker, $330,000 just going to reserves. The purchase of that vehicle has been approved, but we won't actually receive it till 2026. So the only thing that will have to be paid for is the frame of the truck in 2025. So a portion of the piece that's been applied to reserves will be used in that year, and then we'll see the final small portion put to the actual purchase in 2026. So the fire vehicle 9851 replacement, $70,000, and then extrication, battery-powered extrication equipment at $50,000. Under recreation cultural services, again, no change here, just to present them to council. It's the Westmeath boat launch, planning and rehab, $100,000. Cobden Arena Ice Plant Electrical Panel, $70,000. Structural assessments for all 3 arenas at $60,000. And then the Cobden Arena flooring replacement, either the lobby or upstairs. This was a larger budget item that we had to reduce in order just to stay within the 4.2. And it's $25,000. Those all are funded through CCBF, and that comes back to my note of what we fund through the CCBF program. So parks, accessible picnic tables at $15,000, that's the levy. And then the Cobden Arena tables and chairs at $10,600, again through the levy. Transportation services, so there's the Greater Mulcher Head at $30,000 through the levy. Mindview salt shed repair, or sand shed repair, sorry, $17,500. Sweeping head and tank for sidewalk tractor at $15,000. Grant Settlement Road, so that's from Forstersfield Road to McCoy to redo it as DST with meeting our new guidelines and with the accessible lanes, which is a widening of the road, it comes to $850,000. Wallace and Simmons Drive asphalt, $70,000. And this one, the reason it comes up is consideration, and I noted this in the public meeting. This one is dependent on our neighboring municipality, this is a border road. Whether they actually add this to their levy or not, we would then either come forward to council with this project as being unfinanced, or with the option of removing one of the other roads, either McFarland or Wallace and Simmons, postponing them for 1 year in order to complete this project, because it is a joint project between the 2 municipalities. And timing is of the essence. If one municipality puts it in their budget, we kind of have to follow through, or we may lose the window to actually have that road redone. If the Public Works Manager wants to make any comments to that. No? Good? No. Okay. So these are just the maps. I just included them again just so everybody sees what the roads are located that we are proposing for 2025. So this is Grand Settlement Road, Wallace and Simmons Drive here in Cobden, McFarland Road just down off the highway, and then Cemetery Road, which runs our border between us and Laurentian Valley. It goes between Greenwood Road and Beachbrook Road. It is the main access point to our industrial park. So now it's questions and council direction. So accept the proposed 2025 capital special projects as presented by staff, bring forward for bylaw, or amend the 2025 capital and special projects as presented and bring forward for bylaw.
Thank you, Treasurer. Any comments or questions for staff on the presentation so far? I'm going to go Councillor Olmsted first, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This goes to the Manager of Public Works. So I see we're going to McCoy Road, which that's a great stretch. That's a huge step in the right direction. What's the leftover portion to? I think we came from the north down to, is it Fletcher Road? So how many kilometers would remain there? Do you have any idea to finish this road?
Yes, if you can scroll back, sorry. Mm-hmm. Offhand, I believe it's, the total is, I believe it's 10 kilometers, I believe, in total from that section. And this section is 6.44, I believe.
Okay, so there's about 3 and change left.
I believe so, don't quote me on that. I can verify that, but.
Great. Just for interest, thank you very much.
Councillor Trim.
Yes, again, just for interest, how many accessible wheelchair picnic tables will $15,000 buy, do you think?
We had that amount that was requested was quite a bit more. So I think best guess we're just under 10.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? Councillor Tabbert?
Be an easy one. The electrical vehicle charging stations. Are we, and this, I don't know if this has been discussed already, but is this like, I don't know anything about this, but fast charging? I was at a luncheon and some people were talking about getting charging stations within Whitewater. And they said there's no use getting them if they're not going to be fast charging. So is this fast charging or just, I guess, normal charging?
Yeah, so we haven't procured the charging units yet, but yeah, they would be, and I'm no expert in the charging world of vehicles, but yeah, they are the high-speed charge units is what we would try to procure, yeah. Thanks.
They're actually coming out with models based on traffic. You need some trickle chargers, you need some medium chargers and some rapid charges. They cost different amounts based on the amount of power you're receiving over that smaller period of time. But there's different needs that you have to satisfy. You're exactly right. Good. Any other questions? Councillor Bell.
Just in relation to the electric vehicle and charging stations, do we have a site for those yet as to where they're going to be installed?
So presently, no. Curtis and I were meeting with the staff team from the 3 municipalities next week. And Annette's done a lot of the investigations with companies and all that, but once we determine, once we have a better sense and we have to sign an agreement with Bonnechere Valley, so that'll come back to council and we'll have a better idea of what the program will look like, and perhaps as part of that report, we could try to guide, we could recommend locations for them. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment regarding the Cobden Arena table and chairs. If we could just, before, I don't know what, just dispose of them or what you do with them, but just to see if Beachburg or Westmeath, they may be in better shape than even some of these table and chairs, if they can just be on the priority list for sure to see if there's anything there that they could use.
Yes, we could. Now, the chairs in Cobden are wooden for the most part.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from council? Good. I just have one thing, and it's for Public Works, but just with relation to McFarland Road, and just in recognition of the highway access for one of the neighboring commercial properties, it may influence McFarland Road and how it might be used. So just if we can keep that in consideration, whether or not they have direct access off the highway or have to use McFarland Road. You're tracking that, Manager of Public Works?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good. No other questions? We will look for general concurrence on option 1 to accept as proposed. Yeah, excellent. All in favor? We are accepting number 1, which is to accept it as presented. Thank
Perfect.
you.
I'll move on to the next. So I had this slide before, and it shows where the 4.2% levy goes to. If we continue with the 4.2% and the growth of our capital piece towards funding our own capital without our reliance or lowering our reliance on grants. So by the end of 2032, we're gonna just a little over $3.5 million. And it was requested to show what that would look like on the levy. So I did some rough calculation math, and so today, 2024, on $100,000 of assessment, our municipal levy is $732.83. By the year 2032, continuing with the 4.2% increase, we look about $1,125.98. So that's an increase by the year 2032 of $393.16. So 9-year increase, like over 9 years, that's what our increase would look like. As an impact to $100,000 assessment, stipulating no growth into this calculation and a 1% operating piece into this.
We'll take some questions on this. Councillor Bell?
Do you have any idea where that would put us comparatively to the municipalities that are at the higher tax rates right now? Pembroke, Renfrew, so McNabb, Braeside. There's 3 municipalities that are kind of on the upper end that are comparable to us. Do you know where that puts us on that scale?
Not offhand, unfortunately. It's a good question. I do a calculation on the graph at the end, and I'll see if I can figure that out between that and now and that point. But with the $300, I believe our difference between us and the highest municipality is about Thank you. Yeah, it's about 750 or so. So we're still not the highest, even with this increase. And they're going to have to continue to increase as well. And I'll illustrate where this new levy amount that we've proposed will indicate, and I have a slide to show that.
Any other questions at this point? I just get you to recognize that we're taking a $730 levy and we're essentially increasing it by 50%. Okay, good.
All right.
If there's no other questions, let's keep going.
So, since Council chose option 1, this is our residential tax rate versus 2024. So the residential tax rate on $100,000 goes from $732.83 to $789.62, which is a $56.79 increase. If we look at a medium family detached home, this is per our UMP calculation. They put it as $179,000. That's all properties within the township. So our lower tier municipal tax rate would go from $1,311.77 to $1,413.43, which is a $101.66 increase. This would have been option 2 if we had chose that other side. This is the graph I was mentioning, Councillor Bell, that it shows this is where we were. This is a duplication of our graph from earlier, and where we sit, and you can see the highest taxation is $1,800 is around the highest number. So we'd still be at the 1,200 range. So we'd still be this is all, by the way, has the county and education in there as well. So if you added $300 onto it, we'd go from $1,200 to around the $1,600 mark. So we would just be around the top, but again, they'd all continue up at the same pace.
Yes, Councillor Bell.
Sorry, and just, this doesn't include any increases in funding with the OCIF or any provincial grants that we get, which we know we're being underpaid right now by a significant margin, so that this may adjust moving forward as well, correct?
That's correct. The fact of it bringing to my end of 2032 was where we get to about $3.5 million. Our total amount that needs to be tax funded or at the current level of service we have is about $9 million. So it's 1/3. The other third can be funded out of a similar portion by grants, in the fact that we're owed entitled to a good chunk of money through OSIF, depending on how much they change the calculation for that. It could increase over the time with our CCBF funding and all those portions. It gets us closer to that 50% mark. And we just have to continue growing that, but that's kind of if we're able to 50% get to that, whenever we redo the asset management plan and come up and re-verify whether that 4.2 is the perfect number, we still need to have something going forward for capital reinvestment. And at this point in time, we still haven't met the $1 million mark of actual contribution for ourselves. We're still getting more for grants than we are for actually our own contribution to capital. So it's just to build that chunk. This slide is the new slide, which moves our bar with the increase. This is comparing all the other municipalities in 2024 with our new increase and where it moves our bar. So if you notice, we just literally switched places with Laurentian Hills. We are still in the same main middle area with the 7.9% levy increase as all the other municipalities. We barely moved, and they all are going to have to see similar increases to us in the sevens, I would expect, to account for this policing and everything. So everybody's going to move up very similar. I have a feeling that our municipality will stay more or less static in its location of affordability within the county. Next, I'll move on to water and wastewater, unless anybody has any questions on that part of the graph. Okay, so water, wastewater. So the key highlights, there's really been no change here other than some contract changes. So the water increase is proposed at 3%, wastewater the same at 3%, more or less just to kind of account for our growth or our CPI or inflation pressures. This is achievable because of the amount we attributed to the budget through our OSIF funding, from moving it from the general side to the wastewater side. So this is just a comparison of what the original rate study that we're currently renewing indicated versus the actual increases that we're seeing are approved by council. So see, they recommended an 8% increase for 2025 for water, and we're able to achieve a 3% increase, still achieving the same revenue amount, actually more revenue amount, by allocating a portion of our OSIF to it and funding our debenture cost at this time. And then wastewater goes from 3%, and they were originally posting a 2%, but again, wastewater unfortunately was before the operation of our current wastewater treatment plant. So these numbers are unfortunately understated, and that's one of the reasons why we're redoing this study portion to re-solidify what the rates in the future going forward and create that 10-year capital plan and rate structure going forward. So what was originally presented is in the green box in the middle. So the revenue side has not changed. Salary has slightly changed, but again, that's just an allocation of benefits that was errorly missed before. The difference is the contract, so it went from 598 down to 577. This is all still preliminary. We're still going through the actual process of negotiating that contract, but this is a preliminary amount. And what has happened is as that amount goes down, the transfer to reserve goes up. Hopefully it'll be finalized, and I'll make a short presentation right before the actual budget is passed, if we can get to that point on December 4th. If not, we'd pass with these amounts in budget, and then with the passing or with the signing of the new contract, bring a report back to council of changing that, requesting a certain amount be pulled back from reserve if needed, or the surplus being allocated to reserve is how I would best recommend this going forward, just to not affect the user rates and keep the accounting part of it clean. So under the capital side, underwater is the generator fencing in Cobden. So we have a generator in Cobden, it just doesn't have fencing around it, and it's been noted by Aqua that it should be, for security reasons, cost $15,000. So then the 2025 residential rate would be $1,208.53, up from $1,173.33. So total change is $35.20, or the billing change would be $5.87. So your residents in Beachburg and Haley's, this is the billing increase they would see as a residential property. Under wastewater, again in the green box is what was originally presented. So the amended piece is the salary, slight change, again due to benefits, and then the contract, again another decrease through the negotiations. So now it allows for a bigger transfer to reserves of $243,293. And again, I would just bring a note, or bring your attention back to the fact that with allocating a chunk of our money from OSIF to the wastewater side, where actually enables us to mitigate the increase of rate that the taxpayers or that the users see, and put something to reserves. Because in 2024 we only allocated $12,400 to reserves, which in today's society doesn't buy much for capital. This actually starts to rebuild that reserve and eliminate our dependence on debentures and the costs that are associated with those. So wastewater, the capital projects is the electric chain lift and the permeate rotary pump, which is a replacement or a backup pump, $35,000 and $30,000 for the chain lift. So the wastewater rates go from $1901.73 in 2024 to $1958.78 for 2025. So the total increase that 3% represents is $57.05, or a total billing change of $9.51. And I'll just show this because this is what the actual Cobden residents would see. This is the water wastewater combined, so it goes from $3,075.06 to $3,167.31. So the annual change is $92.25, or billing $15.38. And as noted by the Water Wastewater Task Force, if once approved, in the first billing that goes out in 2025, which is our last billing for the months of November and December, of 2024. We'll be including a newsletter piece talking about the budget rate changes for this, so that the notification out to the public is long in ahead of the actual billing that goes out for the first billing where this change occurs in March. Just as a notice to council. So we're again doing option 1. So a property with $198,000 assessment, which through my work with MPAC has told me that this is the median assessment for Cobden, and the properties in Beachburg. So municipal tax would go from $14.51 to $15.63, $112 increase, or monthly change $9.33. If you just have water, so you're in Haley's or Beachburg, goes from $26.24.33 to $27.71.53, increase of $147.20 or $12.27 monthly. And then for the Cobden residents, it goes from $4,526.06 to $47.30.31. The change is $204.25, or the monthly change is $17.02. Any questions about that part?
Questions or comments on water or wastewater? I don't see any. So any challenges with concurrence on option 1 to accept as proposed? I see nobody in disagreement, so we are going to go with option 1, accept as proposed by staff.
Perfect, thank you. And then this is just a wrap up. So we're done the 20th meeting for this presentation. So the only step now left is the December 4th regular meeting. And overall, there won't be a presentation of the budget. It'll just be the actual bringing of the bylaw to be passed at the meeting. So the overall budget from the direction of council will remain unchanged from this presentation and be carried forward. And I'll provide a full detail of the budget line by line to all of council ahead of that time, so they can see how everything is laid out, not just a summary side. Thank you.
Perfect. Any final questions or comments on the presentation? Councillor Bell.
Sorry, I know this presentation is already done and maybe this isn't the right time for it, but I was just wondering, we always do the comparisons of the townships that are neighboring townships as far as affordability, tax rates, that sort of thing. I was just wondering if at some point, doesn't necessarily have to be right now, but if we would be able to get a comparison of similar sized townships in Ontario, doesn't have to be extensive, but just looking at, maybe like the high and low of what other Ontario municipalities are being taxed at, what their tax rates are.
That should be our BLR option, correct?
BMA.
BMA.
So we applied to be part of the BMA study report for 2024. I provided them all the information, and actually I just got the email back today, but I haven't read it yet. The preliminary draft, which compares us to another 127 municipalities within the province. So we'll be able to look and we'll present it back to council as to where we stand on that. There's not a lot of county municipalities included in it, but a lot of Southern Ontario municipalities included, so we'll be able to see where it compares everything, our building permits, our tax rates, it uses our FIR data. It's a full comparison of all portions of it. I'm curious to read it myself, having read the prior versions that we were not included in, and knowing where we would sit as to where we sit now.
Sorry, through you, the mayor. Yeah, I appreciate I know I asked this question for the last couple of years, but yeah, I am interested. I appreciate the comparisons to our local municipalities, but just for interest's sake, I am interested to see where we fit in the rest of the province, and just for comparison's sake, and maybe for information on what we could possibly be doing better, or what we are doing better than other municipalities to keep things as efficient as possible. So appreciate that.
Good. Excellent. Yeah, I'm very curious what's going to come out of that report. Excellent. Any other final questions, comments from council on the budget presentation? Excellent. So we have 2 resolutions. The first one is to receive the 2025 budget presentation. That was moved by Councillor Tabbert, seconded by Councillor Moore. There's no other questions on that. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. The second resolution is to approve the OPP detachment 2025 budget and agree to an equal shared billing model in the absence of a consensus-based alternative. Any final questions? And that was moved by Councillor Olmsted, seconded by Councillor Trim. Call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Good, clerk. We're happy with that. Okay. We have, next item on the agenda is the notice of motion. We have 2 notices of motion here. I just want to check with council. Do we need a quick break before we get into these 2? Or would you like to plow through? Yes, a break. Excellent. Okay. So we will take a short break, please. And welcome back to the Township Whitewater Region's regular council meeting for Wednesday, November 20th. We're going to call ourselves back to order here at 7:39 p.m. And just because we're getting close to the end of our timeline for 7:45, I'm going to ask if we can have a precautionary motion to extend. Seen Councillor Tripp as the mover. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor. And we will extend the full 30 minutes, and when we finish, we finish. It's good. And all those in favor? And I have 7 out of 7. Tripp and Deputy Mayor. Excellent. So next item on the agenda is number 10, which is our notices of motion. We have 2 of them tonight. The recommendation. I am going to read the direction portion of it. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region directs staff to 1, investigate current traffic patterns, vehicle types, and speed compliance on Watchorn Drive, particularly for large trucks and wide loads. 2, assess the need for potential traffic calming measures, speed reduction strategies, or load restrictions on Watchorn Drive. 3, explore the feasibility of implementing signage, designated truck routes, or alternate pathways to divert large trucks and wide loads away from residential areas if necessary. And 4, report back to council with recommendations to improve safety and mitigation impacts on residents. My mover is Councillor Moore. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tabbert. And I will turn the floor back over to Councillor Moore. If he has any comments or if you want to invite staff to speak, I'll leave that at your discretion.
I just have 2 comments while I have a voice. One of them is today I seen a transport truck going south on Watchorn Drive with the 2 longest trains I've ever seen. I don't know if they came from out west or where they came from. I don't know how we got around the corner at the far end. And it just boggled my mind. I thought most of the traffic was done, but we're still at high seed traffic, if that makes any sense to the local farmers. The crop is still coming off. So they're still drying and they're still trucking as fast as they can. There's at least 5 companies past my corner. 4 of them go up the back way. 1 goes up the main street. So it's only a matter of time. They're going up at all times. They're going up school bus times, etc. It's only a matter of time before something happens. Now, a couple of weeks ago, something did happen. So I would really like staff to investigate what we could do to get rid of the large trucks and the moving of homes and houses down this strip. It's only a matter of time before somebody's in trouble, and I don't know who it would be, because if we don't have any signs posted saying they can't be on that road, the municipality could be in trouble. So I turn it over now to staff, and maybe they can enlighten us on how to proceed. Seeing how it is fall, late fall, we're coming into winter, and there's not a lot we can do in the winter, I wouldn't think, but it'll give us a good start come spring.
Yes, and I do, staff have paid attention of that one, and I do agree that that road is a local road, but a GPS and a lot of it will put you down that road, versus you actually using the county road, which is a collector road. The one thing that we're working on is our transportation master plan, which will define what roads are local, ulterior, and collector. And additionally, part of the work plan that we're working on is a transportation bylaw. That in one section, part of that bylaw would list what roads are no truck-through traffic. The one thing that staff has to look into is what's the outcome if no large trucks are involved. There's one business that has large trucks on that road. What would be the outcome of it? Which would have, staff would have to first investigate through the Highway Traffic Act is if there's no truck traffic, can they actually use that road to access their business?
Excellent, thank you. If there's nothing else, Councillor Moore, I'll go to the seconder, which is Councillor Tabbert.
Yes, I agree. Something has to be done on this road. I do have a question, though. I keep hearing about this transportation bylaw that we're working on. Can this road, with all the complaints that we have, well, I shouldn't say all the complaints, but with the complaints we've received, can this wait for a transportation bylaw, or do we have any idea when it's coming? Because I would rather see this dealt with sooner rather than later.
Without it, like, staff can pass a separate bylaw. If one direction of council would want to bring back bylaw at any meeting, we can bring back bylaw stating that this road would be have no truck traffic. I'm outside of the wholesome transportation bylaw as one option. Staff are working on it with many other part items for the work plan, and we're getting closer to it. But it's a fulsome, and what we're trying to achieve is even just the part of the is one of the part of the bylaw we like to bring is we have a lot of roads that are private or unmaintained that are on our the township right away. So we're trying to working with legal to determine all of these roads that are, if they're private, on our and list them in a bylaw. So for future staff or for future council, that they can actually define or what roads what and whose responsibility it is. But in a summary, that if council decided to, if direct staff to come back with a bylaw just on this one road, that we can bring back in the future.
So I'm just gonna make sure that's clear for Councillor Tabbert. So item 4, when they report back to council on what they found under items 1 through 3, we could essentially pull that part out of the transportation master plan, implement a plan specific to that road prior to the release of the transportation master plan. That's my interpretation. Is that correct, staff?
That is correct, and also part of the transportation master plan, we're also working on policies on traffic calming, for example. So it'll be part of a whole procedure of what roads are scoring technique. So if a resident or a councillor decides wants to provide to suggest that we do traffic calming on a certain road, staff would do a calculation and determine that if it would meet the criteria.
And CAO?
Yeah, if I could just ask the manager, I think the transportation master plan schedule is expecting that we go to the public shortly and that we conclude that project in like January, February of 2025. Is that correct?
That's correct. Originally, because it's working with the county and I believe 5 other or 6 other municipalities. The next public house was supposed to be held in this fall, but it since then it was pushed off to January, February, which would be communication in our current, not to for staff and council and residents to attend.
And if I could just, my understanding, there's other intersections or other roads that have been brought to our attention through 2024, maybe the later part of 2023, that we're trying to address holistically through the transportation bylaw and the transportation master plan. So if I could, if the direction could be that we report back in Q1 of 2025, I think that would provide us enough time to evaluate. And I'm looking at you, manager, to say, does that make sense for a time frame?
Yeah, definitely. We are again like the consultant on the plan is working and we're meeting on a monthly basis, and there's a lot of policies that are part of that plan, which will help with traffic calming, stop signs, for example.
Perfect. So just for clarity, no need, I don't think there's a need to amend the motion, but if there's a sense of concurrence for Q1, then we'll try to deliver something for Q1. Thanks.
Councillor Tabbert.
Just out of curiosity, it says those living along Watchorn Drive. What about Anderson? Because if we close it for one, or if we look at one end, and close it to truck traffic, the other end is still be open. And on top of that, is there, well, probably not, but I was gonna say, can we change that to one named road?
So just for clarity, the motion on the table has Watchorn. I would recommend as a procedural process through you, the clerk, that the amendment to include Anderson should come through that process. And also we could add number 5 to examine renaming of the road at the discretion of council through this notice of motion.
Good, thank you, CAO. Just, I'll just give Councillor Tabbert the opportunity. Would you like to amend the motion?
Yes, I'd like to amend the motion to address Anderson Drive as well.
So include Anderson Drive, because it's one road with 2 names. That's what I had written down here. And to add a 5th action item to look at renaming the road in its length complete?
I don't know if I would put that as part of this package, but maybe later on if it turns out to be a, I mean, it could be a recommendation when they're working on the 2 roads.
Perfect, okay. So
Instead of saying Watchorn and Anderson, they can just change it to something.
So your motion to amend is just to include Anderson.
Yes.
Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor? So far, so good?
We could have did a friendly amendment.
Oh, does that work as a friendly amendment to the mover and the seconder?
Yes, can I speak to it first?
Can you, yeah, I'm okay with that. Can we speak to an amendment? Okay, good, yes.
I think the alleviation of truck traffic on Watchorn will alleviate Anderson.
No, it doesn't.
Because Anderson still has a truck company on it. And right now in half loads, road restrictions, they use Beachburg Road, they do not use Watchorn. So there's a certain time of year they don't even use it. And if these other foreign trucks, because they're not local, most of them, that are doing this supply of process, if they're not allowed to use it, then I think it will alleviate itself for Anderson.
Okay, and all we're doing is recommending the review of the situation, not recommending any changes. Okay, so would that be considered a friendly amendment? Yes, and yes, okay. So we are going to friendly amend that. Is that good, clerk? Okay, good. I'm not getting put into tension here. Good. Deputy Mayor, you're bursting at the seams to talk, no?
No, actually, I was just, I didn't realize Councillor Tabbert was bringing that, and that was my concern as well. Is it, if it's not at both ends, it's not, it just doesn't.
Yeah, as long as we have the consideration of the fact there's a company on there with heavy trucks.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
and how do they access?
Right.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Good, okay. Any other comments from the other side of the room? Councillor Tripp, then Councillor Olmsted.
Just one obvious one, I think Councillor Moore was alluding to it. We have McGregor's Concrete on Anderson Drive. They need to access their business. So there could be some kind of an exception for a portion of that, of that part of Anderson Drive.
Councillor Olmsted?
Thank you. So, as I drive through there with a truck, I'm trying to picture, is a school being on the main street, and is there a crosswalk on the main street in Beachburg?
Yes.
That's
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, I just want to bring to attention again, we do have the public comment that spoke to this seasonal traffic on this route. And I just want to recognize that in the event that they're watching. This framework that we're seeing in Q1 that staff have identified is just that, a framework, which would allow us to still include looking at seasonal traffic on Watchorn and amending the traffic calming based on those findings that we might find on a seasonal basis. Is that, I'm looking at my mover and my seconder, does that still meet your intent? So the considerations of the public comment are still being included in this? Yes. Excellent, okay. Any other comments? So, staff, is that clear?
That's clear, thanks, yeah.
Good, all right. Oh, and Councillor Moore.
Just for interest, I know the last incident, there was 2 telephone poles which actually have hydro crossing. that were in that altercation, the last one that I discussed. To me, it looks like the road may not be centered. If them 2 hydro poles were actually at the 33-foot mark, well, our pavement is right beside them. So we may have to look into that as well to find out if we're actually where we should be. Because that was a forced road at one time, so I'm not 100% sure what might be untitled.
Yes, staff response?
Yeah, correct. So a road allowance typically is 20 meters, 20.1 meters. And it is like common say that typically a road's centered and has 33 feet on both sides. Typically, that's not always the case. It just goes off to one side. And typically, utilities are typically, they try to go to the edge of the, typically 1 meter from the road allowance, like from the road allowance. But there's occasion that it's closer.
If I can do that, can you make sure that you link up with staff to identify exactly which 2 poles you're speaking to? So that's very clear. I noticed your hand, Councillor Tripp.
Just to add to that, I met at the house of the resident who is voicing a concern, and at that time, the truck traffic, large vehicular traffic was a concern, but of equal concern was the speed, and so that isn't seasonal. And so I'm glad that the manager is going to look at both traffic calming and restrictions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Will that also include height in that, the height restriction as well? And the reason I ask that is because I have had our hydro and telephone taken out from a huge farm machinery. So would that also include restriction in height?
So the Highway Traffic Act specifies a certain height. Yeah, I believe it's 13.6, but again, don't quote me on that. But that's correct. And also, utilities have a certain height; they have to be above the actual road. I've seen in cases that the utility is lower sometimes, and typically it's not hydro, but it's other utilities that are lower sometimes. But in this case, I believe just traffic, like just the actual no truck traffic would be fine, as the act speaks to the height of vehicles.
Thank you.
Perfect. No other comments? And last one I'll just add to the discussion so it's recognized is the county's effort to purchase that mobile photo radar to help enforce speed. I know it's going to be based on community safety zones. Staff is working at that, but again, this is an area, that's another tool that can be considered. Excellent. No other comments on this? We will then vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Excellent discussion. And obviously a pretty significant issue in our community. Next item is 10.2, large item pickup, and the recommendation, and I'll skip down to the resolved part. The clerk is nodding. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region directs staff to 1, conduct a cost analysis for implementing an annual large item pickup service using a contracted waste collection provider, including potential tipping fees and contractor rates. 2, identify and outline a list of acceptable large items for disposal, considering common household items such as furniture, mattresses, select appliances, while excluding hazardous or non-compliant waste. And 3, estimate the potential budget impact for 2026, incorporating contractor quotes, tipping fees, administrative costs, and any potential revenue from fees collected for items outside the accepted list. That is moved by Councillor Moore. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor. And I'll come back to Councillor Moore for comments, or if you want to offer anything from staff.
Nothing further. I agree with everything that's listed there. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
And I would agree as well. I'm in favor of this. It's good. Thank you.
Good. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Bell.
I'm not going to be in favor of this motion. Just looking at what we're going to be dealing with in an adjustment to the garbage pickup and the recycling programs. There's a large group in our community that's not going to be included in that, and that's small businesses and community groups and centers and that type of thing. I think me personally, I'd rather direct staff to investigate that before we went to a potential large item pickup. I think our small businesses and those community groups are going to be left out in the cold if we decide not to pick up the tab for the portion of that waste collection and the recycling whenever we transition in 2025 or in 2025. So I think personally I'd rather direct the resources into coming up with a solution for that first before we try to tackle this.
Good. And Councillor Tripp?
Yes, I don't know if I agree with Councillor Bell, but I would love to know what this is going to cost, because I would like to know how many people actually want this. And I have been approaching people about it, and they'll say, well, if it's free, we would like it. Of course. How much is going to cost? And I don't know. I would like to know that, but I am really concerned about service creep, where we continue to provide more things for people, and then at some point we might decide we can't, like happened in Ottawa this year, where they pulled back on their garbage, and there's a hue and cry. It's hard to take away a service. Much easier to give it, but it's hard to take it away. And there's so many unknowns with this, because we could get a price, of course, for what it would cost next year. But come renegotiation time, we have no control over what that might be. And I'm also concerned about how are we picking up mattresses when we know the cost of getting rid of those things are as part of this plan. So I have a lot of questions, and I don't know if a review by council would help, which would mean I would kind of support this. But overall, I'm very wary of this whole idea of adding a further burden to people when I've already voted in favor of bumping the taxes this year for policing costs. I mean, how much can we do? And so I am concerned, and I really agree with Councillor Bell's comments with respect to the whole waste problem, including with our commercial sector. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tripp. Councillor Olmsted.
It looks like it's a clean sweep on this side of the table, because I agree with both councillors on this side. I think if we did go ahead with it, regardless of what the cost would, I think a small portion of the taxpayer is actually going to use the service, and it's going to be borne on all taxpayers. And I think the cost of, if you have a truck or if you have some friends or family that could throw something in the back of a truck and take it to the landfill on their own, I think the cost is far less than what this is going to cost us. So in that regard, I'm going to vote it down. Thank you.
Good. Is there any other comments? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. This was a service. This was a service that we had previous, and it was taken away. We used to offer this, and we stopped. And I still, to this day, get requests about this, about a large pickup. There are certainly people who have, and we do know a couple of contractors out there that will pay to pick something up. But I will still agree that I still would love to see us do this, continue, or not continue, but bring this back once again. Even if we do it just once a year. I know there's other municipalities who do it, I believe, twice a year. I think what happens, too, is probably the first year we do it, it'll be because so many people are probably in their back sheds and everywhere else that's hiding or has us sitting there. Anyway, I would just still be in favor of a one-time pickup once a year. Just my take. Thank you.
Good. So far we're at, we have some arguments for and some arguments against. Recognizing that the proposal here at hand is to do the estimate, to do the review, the analysis on the option. It is not voting for the option at this point in time. And it does identify all the costs. So I'll just highlight back to, as Councillor Olmsted said, this is not going to be any cheaper than taking it yourself. Yet it will be borne by everybody. So the tipping fees aren't being avoided. The administrative costs aren't being avoided. You're simply, instead of calling a contractor yourself, we're going to get one to do it, and that person would then do everybody. So it's hard to say what that cost is, but this analysis would confirm that. Okay, so that's what I'm hearing so far. I'm going to come back to Councillor Moore.
Just wondering if we could have a recorded vote and put it to bed.
So noted. Is there any final questions or comments, or I'll call for the vote? Yes, Councillor Tripp.
I'm not remembering, just to remind me, Deputy Mayor, I'm not remembering when I had the opportunity to put large items out at my driveway. I don't remember when that, or maybe I just didn't know about it, because I've never done it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, do you have a date?
Well, can Councillor Moore enlighten me, because he's the one with the great memory, but it's been a long time. It was a while back. Pardon me?
Pre-amalgamation?
For me, it was pre-amalgamation.
It was
Because it was
pre-amalgamation.
Glen Moore that did it.
Was it just?
And Danny Buchanan did it for a couple of years too in the village of Beechburg.
So it was pre-amalgamation.
Pre-amalgamation.
So it is a long time, but
Okay.
there you go.
Good. If there are any other final questions, or before I ask the clerk to go through the recorded vote? Okay, seeing none, clerk, the floor is yours.
It's been so long since I've done this. That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah. Councillor Moore.
Sorry, just turn your mic on.
4.
Deputy Mayor Rieger.
Or
Councillor Bell.
Against.
Councillor Olmsted. I believe it's the highest votes. It goes. Councillor Tappert, sorry.
I'm going to have to vote for it.
Where is she? Councillor Olmsted.
Against.
Councillor Trim.
Against.
Mayor.
And the tiebreaker is against.
So it's yeah, 4-3. Against.
Thank you. Good practice on recorded votes. Great discussion and a worthwhile review of that issue, especially at the request of one of our residents. So thank you for that debate. The notice of motion is defeated. Excellent. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is correspondence. There are only 3 items. They're all information items. I will not go through them tonight, but just to highlight the council summary MLS listing, with some very interesting numbers on it, positive in my perspective, and some information on child welfare funding. If that's an area, you can see the advocacy of the county trying to advocate on behalf of child welfare funding here in the county of Renfrew to support our families. Next item is announcements, and I'll just quickly go through, Deputy Mayor.
nothing at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Bell?
Nothing for me.
Councillor Tabbert?
Yes, on the 24th of November, which is Sunday, the Beachburg Lions are hosting a Lights of Hope fundraising event at their hall. At 7 p.m., yes, sorry. And at 7 p.m. on Friday, the Beachburg Fair is hosting its annual, its AGM at the Lions Hall. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olmsted.
I have nothing, thank you.
Councillor Moore?
No, I've got airport and Otter River Power tomorrow, and then there is a Christmas carol coming up on the 30th at Ross Museum, St. Aidan's Church at 7 p.m. if anybody's interested in carol singing. That's it. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And Councillor Tripp?
Yes, I would just remind the public to take a look at our calendar, online calendar, and check out the parades. There are going to be 3 parades, and the council is putting in a float, and staff, under the leadership of Clerk Miller, is going to decorate it, and so that will be for sure. Everyone, including children, come out and see that. Thank you.
Excellent. And I only have one item to add to your list, and that's the Whitewater Growers Dinner on Saturday night, the 23rd of November coming up. So, good. Item number 13 is our bylaws. We only have the confirmatory bylaw tonight, so the recommendation is be it resolved that the bylaw listed on the November 20th, 24 agenda be taken as read and passed. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. Any final comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Clerk, there's no closed session? No closed session, so we are adjourned at 8:11 p.m. Thank you for your time tonight.